Chapter 946. Guoxinqing, who was lying on the roof of a tall building, had a fierce look in his eyes. Then he gestured to Li Qingsong on the other side to launch an attack. Before seeing whether Luan Xiaoyu was dead or alive, the operation had to continue. Especially before leaving behind the bodies of the Southern Ming agents, they couldn't retreat. A sharp whistle sounded, indicating the start of the attack. Immediately, nearly 100 men dressed in black walked out from the nearby houses and corners. They moved forward quickly like ghosts, heading straight for the luxurious carriage in the middle of the road. The 30 carriage guards kept retreating until they couldn't retreat any further. Then they pulled out their weapons and got into a defensive stance. The eyes of nearly 100 assassins were red. They only had one goal, and that was the woman in the carriage. As long as they killed this woman, they would have made a great contribution. Then, they could return to the Southern Ming Empire to receive their rewards. This was their only hope to start afresh and become a righteous person again. They had to grab hold of this opportunity. With 100 people fighting against 36 people, the advantage was very obvious. After just one exchange, the assassins in black had the upper hand. 2 of the assassins in black even bypassed the guards and came to the front of the carriage. They reached out and pulled the curtain. Shwa! A white light flashed, and the arm that had just reached out suddenly flew up. A figure rushed out from the carriage. Who else could it be but Tianhu? 2 blades flashed quickly, and the assassins in black fell to the ground one after another. Not a single one of them was a match for them. At the same time, teams of cavalry appeared on both sides of the street and surrounded the area. Not good retreat. Seeing that this was clearly a trap, the assassins in black stopped attacking and turned to retreat. They wanted to use the surrounding buildings to escape. The 36 guards who had been resisting all this time suddenly had a Type 95 submachine gun in their hands. A series of gunshots rang out. One after another, the black-clothed assassins fell to the ground. The sound of gunshots indicated that they had lost the ability to escape. Let's go. Seeing that the ambush was actually a trap, Guoxinqing and Li Qingsong, who were on the roof, also turned to leave. Although they had fallen into a trap this time, they had completed more than half of their mission. They had successfully shifted the blame to the Southern Ming Empire. However, at this time, it was not so easy for the 2 of them to leave. Their movements had long been watched by the Wolf Fang Special Forces. When they were about to leave, more than a dozen shadows also followed them. Originally, there were many residences here, so it would be difficult to find the 2 of them. It was Li Qingsong's fault for blowing a whistle when he gave the order to attack. Wolf Fang happened to catch it. Then, he found Guoxinqing through Li Qingsong's hand gesture. Since they had been discovered, there was no way they could escape. Guoxinqing and Li Qingsong, who were retreating immediately, realized that someone was following them. This made them extremely shocked. They could not understand how they had been discovered when they had been so careful. However, now was not the time to pursue these matters. Escaping was the problem that needed to be considered. Li Qingsong was very unlucky. In the process of escaping, he rushed straight toward another member of the Wolf Fang Special Forces, and was blocked. Seeing that the road ahead was blocked, he gritted his teeth and jumped down from the roof that was more than 30 feet high. Ouch! Feeling that his ankle was twisted, Li Qingsong immediately took a deep breath. He rolled on the ground and got up. He supported his broken leg and continued to leave. Then, when he stood up and looked up, 2 members of the Wolf Fang Special Forces appeared in front and behind him. They looked at him as if they were looking at a monkey being played. Their eyes were full of mockery. Enduring the pain from his ankle, Li Qingsong's hands reached for his waist. 2 short knives appeared in his hands. He shouted and rushed toward the 2 members of the Wolf Fang Special Forces in front of him. Ever since he joined the Imperial Secret Service, he was already extraordinary. This was where his confidence came from. Usually 6 or 7 people would not be able to get close to him. Even if he was injured now, it should not be a problem for him to fight against 4 people. Li Qingsong, who was confident, rushed forward. The 2 short knives were fierce and powerful. He slashed diagonally. Every move he made was a killing move. It was as if he would kill anyone who dared to block him. Li Qingsong was desperate enough. His face was full of murderous intent. The two short knives were also very sharp. However, he did not know that his opponents were the best members of the Wolf Fang Special Forces, Silver Hand and Steel Leg. Facing the rushing Li Qingsong and the two short knives that were shining with silver light, the two of them were not afraid. Instead, they laughed and let him get close to them. However, they did not show the slightest intention to retreat. It was not until the short knives were in front of them that they stretched out one hand and one leg. They grabbed the back of the two knives with both hands and kicked Li Qingsong's chest. With a powerful force, a figure was kicked out. Even in the midst of frantically retreating, Li Qingsong's face still had an unconcealable fear. He thought that he was already very powerful, but he did not know that there was always someone stronger. Compared to the more elite Wolf Fang Special Forces, the gap between them was still very big. Under Li Qingsong's carelessness, or it could be said that his strength was not equal, he was caught red-handed. In contrast, Guo Xinqing's luck was much better. He was not surrounded when he was escaping. Instead, he escaped from danger. When he landed in a small courtyard that had already been prepared, he changed into the clothes that had already been prepared here. Then he pretended that nothing had happened and walked to the street. Reality told Guo Xinqing that the 5-star army had obviously come prepared. Once they could not find him, he was afraid that they would immediately search for him. The small courtyard he was in was certainly not safe. Now only by walking out of Seoul could he be considered to be really out of danger. Guo Xinqing, who had a beard on his face and changed into silk clothes, came to the street. Unfortunately, he found that there were soldiers of the 5-star army everywhere. They had actually blocked all the streets in this area. Anyone who entered or left had to be strictly checked. Guo Xinqing reached out and touched the travel pass that he had already prepared. He wanted to try to rush out, but his calm personality made him stop the impulse in his heart. He did not know if the travel pass that he had bought from the North Korean official was useful. If there was a problem, then he would be walking into a trap. He looked to his left and right, and when he saw a large mansion, he suddenly made a decision. He would hide there for a while. He didn't believe that the 5 Astral Army would be able to seal off the streets forever. As long as the situation was not as tense, it would be time for him to escape. Guo Xinqing's face was as calm as possible. He left the crowd without attracting any attention, and went straight to the courtyard with the word Li written on it. When he arrived at the foot of the courtyard wall, he didn't immediately jump over the wall. Instead, he first listened to see if there were any movements in the courtyard. After confirming that it was safe, he grabbed onto the 2-meter-tall courtyard wall with both hands and jumped over the wall to enter. Generally, in this kind of large courtyard, there would always be some places that no one went to. If he was lucky, he could find a place where no one would go to hide. No one would be able to find him. But it seemed that Guo Xinqing's luck wasn't too good. When he jumped over the wall, he saw a young girl with a pretty good status. That girl was also looking at him at that moment. For a moment, their eyes met, and both of them had surprised expressions in their eyes. Then, the girl wanted to shout after being frightened. But before she could make a sound, she felt a pain in her neck. Then her vision turned black and she fainted. Guo Xinqing finally made his move. He also clearly saw the surrounding environment. It turned out to be a small garden. Judging from the building in front of him, it should be a courtyard that belonged to a young girl's boudoir. It was obvious that the girl from before was sitting here thinking about something. Perhaps she was too engrossed in her thoughts, so she didn't make any movements, causing Guo Xinqing to misjudge. Fortunately, the girl was knocked unconscious at the first moment, and did not expose herself. Next, he only needed to avoid the initial investigation, and then he could find an opportunity to leave. Carrying the girl in his arms, he walked towards the room in the courtyard where the door was already opened. This would become Guo Xinqing's temporary shelter. Overall, his luck was not bad. With this young lady around, eating and drinking was naturally not a problem. The premise was that she fully cooperated with him. Guo Xinqing was not worried about whether the girl would cooperate with him. So many years of experience told him that the more wealthy and noble a person was, the more afraid they would be of death. Under his threat, wouldn't she do whatever he wanted her to do? But how could Guo Xinqing know that this girl was not just anyone, but Li Zhenju? Previously, she was in a daze in the small courtyard because she was at a loss about her future. Han Chang was already dead. It was said that Tian, who had also been reprimanded by the Duke of Loyalty, now he was still imprisoned. Then what was she? What if Tian, who felt that she was unlucky because of this matter and did not want her in the future? Compared to other girls, she might have the right to choose. Because of her, one person was killed and the other was imprisoned. She would inevitably be regarded as an ominous woman by others. She had no more choice. It seemed that blessings did not come in pairs and misfortunes did not come singly. If a person was unlucky, even drinking cold water could be stuck between their teeth. While he was in the courtyard, he actually encountered a criminal. Could this be his fate? After a while, Li Zhenju slowly woke up. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Guo Xinqing, who was standing in front of her with a dagger in his hand. Li Zhenju woke up. Guo Xinqing showed a kind face as much as possible and said, "I am not a bad person. I just offended some enemies. They want to deal with me, so I temporarily hid here. Please rest assured that once the danger is over, I will leave. As long as you cooperate and don't yell, I will not hurt you. How about it?" Chapter 947. Seeing that Guo Xinqing wasn't a lecher, and was even so amiable, Li Zhenju wasn't as nervous as before and nodded. Then the white cloth covering her mouth was removed. "All right, I'm going to let you go now. But if you dare to scream, then the white knife will enter and the red knife will come out. It's a pity that you're so beautiful and yet you're going to die. Wouldn't that be a pity?" Li Zhenju nodded her head twice. Seeing how cooperative Li Zhenju was, Guo Xinqing smiled. "Very good. Next, I have a request. Before I leave, you can only stay in this room. If I discover any movement from you, I guarantee that within a few steps, my knife will fly out and take your life. Do you understand?" "I understand." Li Zhenju nodded her head obediently. "Very good. I believe you're a smart person." Guo Xinqing laughed again. Then he walked to the small table at the side and casually drank the tea placed there. At this moment, it was as if the well water didn't interfere with the river water, and the well water didn't interfere with the river water. They were only waiting for the danger to pass before going their separate ways. It was as if they had never met before. On the streets outside the Li residence, the investigation was still ongoing. The main focus was on middle-aged men. As long as it was someone like this, no matter what identity they had, they would be taken away for screening. Just from this point alone, Guo Xinqing was right not to rashly walk out. More than 2 hours had passed since the search began, but there was still no result. Wolf Fang Captain Tai, who led his men to search the area and finally found the courtyard where Guo Xinqing was staying. They also found the clothes that Guo Xinqing was wearing. This should be one of his strongholds. The surrounding streets have been tightly sealed off. It's impossible for him to leave. How about this? Inform all the troops to search from house to house. In short, we must find him. Tai, who looked at the clothes that Guo Xinqing had thrown away and said angrily. The target actually escaped from under his nose. This was a great humiliation. If he still couldn't find him, how could he face the 6th young master? Therefore, no matter what price he had to pay, he had to find him. After the streets were sealed off, the search began. The Cold Vanguard Regiment of the nearby C's 4th Division had been transferred over to guard the perimeter. The Wolf Fang Special Forces and the 1st Cavalry Division became the main force in the house-to-house search. Finally, the two tigers met and launched a joint operation. Coincidentally, Tian Hu and Tai Hu had met at the entrance of the Li family's courtyard. This place was very close to the street, and it was also a big house with many rooms. It would be very easy to hide a person here. When the two tigers appeared at the entrance of the Li residence with several subordinates, the two nodded in greeting. One was an infantryman, while the other was a cavalry. One was a regular combat unit, while the other was on a special mission. This made it very difficult for both sides to work together. But now they actually bumped into each other. It must be said that it was a kind of fate. Captain Tai, after you. Teacher Tian is too polite. This is Li Minheo's residence, right? You should go first. After a round of politeness, it was Tian who raised his arm and knocked on the door. After all, everyone knew that he and Li Minheo's daughter seemed to get along very well. After all, they would be family in the future. Things like knocking on the door, he could do it. If someone else did it, it would be equivalent to not giving Tian-hu face. Tai-hu was a very good person, so he gave up the opportunity. After a round of knocking, the door of the Li residence opened. As the master of the house, Li Minheo came out with a group of servants. Teacher Tian? Li Minheo didn't know what was going on outside, but with the idea that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble, he stayed in the house and prohibited others from entering or leaving. When he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door, he was a little unhappy. He thought that someone was targeting the Li family. But when he opened the door and saw that the leader was Tian-hu, the anger on his face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a smile. "Oh, I didn't know that Teacher Tian would come. Sorry for not coming out to meet you." Li Minheo was very polite. He spoke very fluent Chinese. It could be seen that he was an official who was heavily influenced by Sinology and Confucianism. "Sir Li, I'm sorry. There are thieves nearby. We need to search from house to house. Oh, by the way, this is Captain Tai-hu." A slap does not hit a smiling face. Moreover, Li Minheo was Li Jinju's father, so he spoke very politely. "Oh, so it's Captain Tai. It's an honor to meet you." Li Minheo was a smart person. After listening to Tian-hu's introduction, he knew that Tai-hu's identity was not simple. While he was smiling, he also tried to raise the other party's identity as much as possible. "Sir Li is too polite. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's just that we have official business to attend to. We'll have a good chat with Sir Li next time. I don't know if we can do a check now." Tai-hu also had a smile on his face. He gave enough face to Tian-hu. Otherwise, there would be no need to be polite. With the military order, they could just go in and check directly. Of course. Generals and brothers, this way please." Li Minheo smiled and stepped aside to let them pass. If it were someone else, he would be more or less unhappy. However, the leader was Tian-hu, so he didn't feel any reluctance. Under Li Minheo's lead, everyone entered the Li family's courtyard. Then the brothers he brought with him started to search. Everyone knew that Tian-hu was related to Li Minheo. Therefore, even though they were searching, they were very careful and didn't damage a single blade of grass or tree. After about half an hour, the soldiers returned to the main courtyard. The news they brought with them was that they didn't find anything suspicious. Tian-hu nodded with satisfaction. Then he looked at Tai-hu. Since the Li family was related to him, it was better for him to not make some decisions. He didn't want others to say that he was covering for them. Tai-hu also smiled at Tian-hu. Then he asked the team members he brought with him, "Are you sure you've checked everything? There's no problem?" "Yes, there's no problem. Only Miss Li Jinju's courtyard is left unchecked." The team members reported. Then their faces showed some embarrassment. In the eyes of the soldiers, there was no difference between men and women. Since they were searching, of course, they couldn't let go of any place. However, who was Li Jinju? After everything was done, she would become Division Commander Tian-hu's concubine. How could such a woman be treated the same? Therefore, no one broke into her courtyard and no one dared to check it. This. Tai-hu looked at Tian-hu with an embarrassed expression. "Division Commander Tian, what do you think about this?" "It's okay. I'll go with Master Li to take a look." Tian-hu naturally understood that this was Iron Tiger giving him face. He immediately accepted the mission, and then looked at Li Minheo who was beside him. Li Jinju was still a member of the Li family. It wasn't appropriate for him to meet her in private. "Oh, no problem. I'll accompany Division Commander Tian to take a look at my daughter. It just so happens that she's not in a good mood recently. I'll have to trouble Division Commander Tian to comfort her." Li Minheo keenly felt that this was an opportunity. How could he let go of an opportunity to get together with his daughter and Tian-hu? "Thank you." Tian-hu expressed his gratitude to Li Minheo. Then he looked at Tai-hu and said, "Captain Tai, why don't we go together? I'll introduce Miss Li to you." Tian-hu didn't want to mix public and private matters. If it turned out that the fugitive was in Li Jinju's room, and he didn't see it, then he wouldn't be able to explain himself even if he had 100 mouths. Although the possibility of this happening was less than 1 in 10,000, it was better to avoid trouble. Originally, Tai-hu didn't want to go in and take a look. There were still many places to check. However, if he rejected Tianhu's invitation, it would seem that he wasn't open and aboveboard. Therefore, after thinking for a while, he nodded. Okay, since that's the case, I'll go and see Miss Lee. It'll be considered as a greeting. It was a great honor to have the dignified commander of the Cold Vanguard Special Forces greet someone. Without a doubt, this machine was for Tianhu. It was also a way to express goodwill. Okay, let's go together. Li Minhao still had a smile on his face. Although he didn't want Division Commander Tai to accompany him, since everyone had the same idea, he naturally couldn't object. Thus, the three of them strode toward Li Zhenju's small courtyard. This time, they didn't bring anyone else. 1 or 2 people were enough to check. In the small courtyard, when the sound of footsteps came from outside the door, Guoxinqing, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. Then he looked at Li Zhenju, who was still trembling with fear, and gestured at the dagger in his hand. Li Zhenju's entire body tensed up. Her face revealed a shocked expression as she nodded lightly. She believed that if she didn't do as this person said, the dagger that scared her would stab her body at any time. The footsteps outside the door were getting closer and closer. Li Minhao's voice could also be heard clearly. Division Commander Tian, Division Commander Tai, this is my daughter's boudoir. Hee, I don't know why the door is closed in the middle of the day. The weather isn't too cold right now. Seeing that the small courtyard's door was closed, Li Minhao smiled awkwardly and prepared to continue forward. Wait! Tai Hu, who was beside him, promptly stopped Li Minhao and asked, Sir Li, you said that Miss Li's door is usually open during the day? Oh, it's October now. The weather in the morning and afternoon is still very warm. Usually it's open except for cloudy and rainy days. Li Minhao instinctively explained. After saying this, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His whole body couldn't help but tremble. Then his body went limp and was about to fall to the ground. Chapter 948. Fortunately, Tianhu reacted quickly and reached out to steady him. Then he gently shook his head. Captain Tai is just suspicious. Perhaps there is no problem. Good, it's best if there is no problem. Li Minhao quickly returned to normal. After all, he had led soldiers before and had some courage. However, it was because this matter involved his daughter. Coincidentally, his daughter was the hope of the Li family. This caused him to lose his composure. At this time, Tianhu had already turned his head and looked at Tai Hu. Captain Tai, are you sure there is a problem here? I'm not sure, but we have to guard against abnormalities. How about this? We will stand on the left and right of the door and wait for Official Li to open the door. Then we will rush in. However, I don't know if Teacher Tian will have any problems with this kind of close combat. At this time, Tai Hu had no time to call his team members outside. If he left now and the person he was looking for was really in the room, he would definitely be alerted. Therefore, the next step would depend on him and Tianhu. I have no problem with close combat. Tianhu nodded. He was not originally a cavalryman. He only learned it later, so close combat was not a problem for him. Good. Then we will need Official Li's cooperation. Don't worry, Teacher Tian and I are here, so there won't be any problems. In a while, you just need to act like normal. Tai Hu saw that Tian who was so confident and his heart was set. Then his gaze fell on Li Minhao. In this short time, Li Minhao had also returned to normal. This matter involved the safety of his daughter and the future hope of the Li family. He also had to calm down. Okay, I know what to do. Don't worry. After the three of them had a preliminary understanding, they returned to the boudoir. In the room, Guoxinqing was listening attentively to something. Just a moment ago, there was no sound outside, which made him suspicious. Now the sound outside was heard again, and it was Li Minhao's voice. Hee, this is my daughter's room. She usually likes to be quiet, so the mansion actually gave her such a courtyard. Now that the door is closed, she must be afraid that she is not feeling well. Let me ask her. In his words, Li Minhao had already revealed his identity. Guoxinqing, who was in the room, did not doubt him. Instead, he looked at Li Zhenju, who could not stop her nervousness, and said, It should be your father. Tell her that she is sick and has already laid down. When she gets better, she will go and pay her respects. Yes. Li Zhenju didn't dare to question him, so she nodded in response. Then she raised her head, suppressed her fear, and said aloud, "Father, your daughter is unwell and has already fallen asleep. How about this? When I'm better, I'll pay my respects to you." "Oh, where is my daughter feeling unwell? She was fine when we had breakfast this morning." The voice outside the door was getting closer and closer. Then, before Guo Xinqing could teach Li Zhenju what to say, the door had been pushed open from the outside. An ray of sunlight naturally shone in. It was also at this time that the door suddenly opened, and two figures flew in from the left and right. One of them fell in front of Guo Xinqing, who was holding a dagger. The sudden change caught Guo Xinqing off guard. He only thought that the person who came was the owner of this place, and only brought 2 servants. He didn't think that the person who came was so skilled and moved so quickly. In a hurry, he instinctively dodged the attack and stabbed the dagger at Li Zhenju's body. The dagger stabbed out and went straight to Li Zhenju's waist. This scene made Li Zhenju couldn't help but scream. Then she felt her body become light, and then a tall and burly body blocked in front of her, facing the dagger. Sensing a familiar aura, Li Zhenju instinctively hugged the figure tightly. Then the sound of weapons clashing could be heard. A cavalry saber and a short saber clashed. At the last moment, the saber blocked the other party's attack and knocked it to the side. Needless to say, the person who saved Li Zhenju was Tian Hu. At the critical moment, he took out his second dagger and saved Li Zhenju's life. When he stretched out his dagger, he also took the opportunity to take a few steps back and sent Li Zhenju to a safe place. Then, he loosened his hand and put her down. He said to Li Minhao, who was still looking at this scene in surprise, "Look after her." After he finished speaking, Tian Hu had already rushed out with his dagger. His target was Guo Xinqing, who was fighting with Tai Hu. Guo Xinqing, who was once an elite of the great Ming Dynasty's genie guards and had few opponents, was in a crisis at this moment. The martial arts he was most proud of had become the most useless at this moment. When he faced the captain of the special forces, Tai Hu, he found that no matter how he struggled, he seemed to always be at a disadvantage. His speed, strength, and flexibility were all inferior. When Guo Xinqing first fought with Tai Hu, he felt a strong pressure. He retreated step by step. In the blink of an eye, he had already retreated 4 steps. Seeing that the wall behind him was not far away, his forehead was covered with layers of sweat. Swish! Another swift blade flashed over, brushing past his arm and slicing off a layer of flesh. Blood dripped down, and pain assaulted his entire body, causing Guo Xinqing's movements to involuntarily slow down. This created an opportunity for Iron Tiger. Taking advantage of the moment when Guo Xinqing's retreating speed slowed down, Iron Tiger swept Guo Xinqing to the ground with a long leg sweep. When his body fell to the ground, Guo Xinqing instinctively wanted to jump up like a carp or a sparrow hawk. However, an extremely sharp thin knife was already placed on his neck. He had a feeling that if he dared to move again, his head would definitely be separated from his body. Guo Xinqing was captured alive. Facing the joint attack of Tai Hu and Tian Hu, no one in the 5-star army could defeat them except for Yang Qindong. After Tai Hu removed Guo Xinqing's chin to prevent him from biting his tongue, he carried Guo Xinqing as if he was carrying a chicken. He smiled and turned around to leave. He had a feeling that this person's identity was definitely not simple. Perhaps he could get more details from him. Tian Hu did not leave immediately. Seeing that Li Zhenju was frightened, he wanted to stay and comfort her. "Don't worry, the bad guy has been caught. No one will threaten you in the future. It was just a dream just now." Okay. Li Zhenju, who had calmed down, temporarily forgot her fear. She looked at Tian Hu and asked, "You didn't kill Han Chang, right?" "Of course not. Xiong Kai must have something to do with that person just now. You can rest assured that with the 6th young master here, it won't take long for the truth to come out." Tian Hu showed a rare smile. Not only him, but probably all the people in Yangxie thought of Yang Qindong as an omnipotent existence. The so-called conspiracy in front of the 6th young master could only be seen through. Guo Xinqing was captured, and so was Li Qingsong. When the two were taken to the dungeon in Seoul, the captured assassins quickly identified the two as their leaders. In this regard, the two had no intention to refute. They not only admitted it frankly, but also revealed their hidden identities. They only asked for a quick death. Taihu, who was in charge of the interrogation, came to the palace after getting the confession. After seeing Yang Chendong, he gave a detailed report. Yang Chendong listened quietly, but after Taihu finished, he shook his head. They said they were sent by Ingzong to deal with me? Yes. As for their identities, we have already sent a report to the headquarters of the Security Bureau. The Baiming Security Bureau branch will soon send a report to us. At that time, everything will come to light. Taihu revealed a naive expression as he spoke. Everything seemed reasonable, and their identities shouldn't be fake. However, Yang Chendong still felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Ever since he was almost assassinated in Baiming's capital, he ordered the Southern Ming merchants to adjust the price of goods. Because of this matter, all of the Southern Ming merchants were very dissatisfied. Of course, they didn't dare to do anything to Yang Chendong, the god of wealth. Therefore, they quickly targeted the Southern Ming imperial court. Because of this matter, the Southern Ming Empire had already sent people several times to express goodwill and apologize. They expressed that the previous matter was a misunderstanding and hoped to have a good talk with the Five-Star Army. After all, Yang Chendong was still the great Ming Empire's loyal duke, so he couldn't be considered an outsider. However, Yang Chendong didn't have any intention of forgiving them. Under such circumstances, how could the Southern Ming Empire still send people to deal with him? Even if they wanted to deal with him, they should have found an opportunity to kill him in one blow. Even if they succeeded, they would only anger him. What good would that do for the Southern Ming Empire? He couldn't figure it out. Yang Chendong had a feeling that there must be a secret behind this unrewarding matter. Looking at Taihu, Yang Chendong said in a gentle tone, "Captain Tai, you must have worked hard. How about this, let's leave the interrogation of Guo Xinqing and Li Qingsong to Beta Persei." "Sixth young master, you don't trust us?" Taihu frowned and there was a hint of urgency in his voice. "It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I have some thoughts. I always thought that things wouldn't be so simple. How about this, let's continue the interrogation. You guys will be the assistants and Beta Persei will be the leader. You guys should also learn from his methods." Yang Chendong didn't want to dampen the enthusiasm of Taihu and the others, so he said this. "Hee, I say old Tai, you guys are very good at carrying out special missions. However, when it comes to interrogations, you guys are still too inexperienced. Haha. Let me teach you guys this time," Second Yang, who was standing beside them, said casually. He had learned a lot about interrogation skills from Yang Chendong. Now that he had the chance to show them, he was naturally proud. Beta Persei, who had received the order, went to the dungeon and called Guo Xinqing and Li Qingsong together. "Listen, you two. You didn't tell the truth before, so give us a chance now. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll be begging me to tell you." There was no torture, only persuasion. Taihu and the others, who were ready to learn, widened their eyes. If the other party could answer the questions just by talking nicely, wouldn't that be too ridiculous? Chapter 949. Fortunately, Guo Xinqing and Li Qingsong did not have the slightest intention of changing their words in the face of the grinning Beta Persei. They still insisted that they were members of the Southern Ming Dynasty's Brocade Guard, and that they had already said what they needed to say. If they did not believe it, they could check it out. "Well, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, hee. Come on, bring them to 2 separate rooms. I want to see how hard their bones are." The smile on Beta Persei's face began to fade, and his voice became much colder. The 2 men were turned on and off separately. Beta Persei still had no intention of torturing them. He just asked people to keep an eye on the 2 men at all times, and then he kept hitting the gong to give them the greatest auditory stimulation. He also instructed that the gong should not stop until the other party was ready to speak again. Every quarter of an hour, a different person would strike the bell. Such a simple arrangement fell into Taihu's eyes. He asked with a puzzled expression, "Is that all? You'll know if it works or not when you try it." Beta Persei laughed and turned to leave. It seemed that torture was not necessary, but this kind of visual stimulation was fatal. Perhaps the 2 men could bear it for a short period of time, but after a long time they would not even be able to sleep. It would not take long for them to have a psychological breakdown. When that time came, they would not dare to lie. The case of Han Chang's murder was closed. The matter was done by the Southern Ming Dynasty. Guo Xinqing, Li Qingsong, and the others' complaints were posted at the entrance of the North Korean provincial government. As the provincial governor, Zhang Yi, in order to appease Han Chang's father, Han Zhao, he specially hired him to work in the new government and gave him a certain amount of power. Politics was not about fighting and killing. The beauty of politics was in compromise. Han Zhao was arranged to work in the new government. This was a signal that the five-star army would not exclude the local forces of North Korea. As long as they made contributions, they would receive corresponding rewards. With this move, in addition to Yeshin's hiring of more than a dozen North Korean officials, stabilizing food prices, redistributing land, allowing more people to have their own land, opening trade routes, preparing to build factories, starting to recruit workers, and a series of other policies, the situation in North Korea became stable again. At this moment, Luan Xiaoyu stood up again and added fuel to the fire. She took out more than 40 marriage applications and completed the initial marriage of the five-star army officers, cadres, and the local forces of North Korea. With each marriage, the situation became more stable. In the palace, after Governor Zhang Yi reported his work, he listened to Yang Qindong's instructions. Governor Zhang, distributing land and opening trade routes are only one aspect of it. You have to find the most suitable path according to your own characteristics. For example, North Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. This is a major characteristic. You should think of something to do with the sea. You are also an old man from Kaegung City. You should know about the canned food factory there. You can think of a way to ask your old mayor to think of a way to borrow some elites to build a factory in North Korea. As long as you have your own factory, there will be a way to sell your products. That is the same as having the freshest bloodline. Only then will you be able to ensure that North Korea's finances will not be affected. This way, you will be able to calm the people and create enough wealth to do what you want to do. Yes. Sixth young master is right. This official will immediately contact the mayor and ask him to support us no matter what. Zhang Yi nodded repeatedly. His eyes were filled with excitement. And the canned fish factory can be built. With the technology and the products are up to standard, you can consider promoting it to other places to sell. I believe that the brother provinces will support you. However, you must remember that you must not fish in a pond. You must have a plan and targeted development for the sea. You must not overdo the fishing. When the time is right, you can also consider artificially getting some fish seedlings and scattering them into the sea. Otherwise, our generation will be able to eat the capital, but the future generations will suffer. Also, you must think of a way to deal with the sewage from the factory in advance. You must ensure that the water quality of the sea is not a problem. Yang Qindong brought out some of the development experiences of the future one by one. There was no such thing as industrial pollution in the current world, but if it was not protected, it was only a matter of time before the destruction of nature occurred. Since he could make the decision, of course, he had to shake off some of the defensive measures in advance. Zhang Ye's small notebook was full of things. After learning from the experience, he left with satisfaction. Beta Persei entered the hall and reported, "Young master, Tai Hu is here. Please." Yang Qindong took a sip of tea. It had been 6 days since Guo Xinqing and Li Qingsong were arrested. There should be some results there. Tai Hu appeared for this matter. He thought that Beta Persei's idea was not much. Wasn't it just torturing people so that they could not sleep? In the past, when they were completing missions, there were times when they could not sleep for 2 days, so they did not think much of it. However, they did not expect that while they could endure it for 2 or 3 days, 5 or 6 days was not something that ordinary people could endure. On the 6th day, Guo Xinqing and Li Qingsong, who had lost a lot of weight from the torture, spoke separately. They weren't afraid of death, but this feeling of being neither alive nor dead was too unbearable. Rather than forcing themselves to endure, they might as well tell him everything. Even if they were to die, they could still ask for a quick release, right? Tai Hu wrote a new confession and gave it to Beta Persei. Beta Persei sent it to the dragon table in front of Yang Qindong. Yang Chendong looked at the two people's new confessions. They all pointed to Prince Nanming, Zhu Huituan. They said that the two people had been bribed by Prince Nanming. This time, they took action to frame the Southern Ming imperial court. Compared to the previous confessions, this result was much more reasonable. Taihu's heart was finally at ease. The matter was finally done. His mission was completed successfully. He did not let down the sixth young master's expectations. This monarch Nanming really has a good plan. Yang Chendong chuckled, then put away the confession. Then he looked at Taihu and asked, "Tell me, what do you think after receiving this confession?" This was clearly a test. It was also a chance for him to perform. After being stunned for a moment, Taihu's mind spun quickly. After about 5 or 6 breaths, he finally raised his head. "Sixth young master, this subordinate thinks that Prince Nanming is not enough to be feared. We don't need to take any revenge." "Oh, tell me about it," Yang Chendong asked with interest. After receiving encouragement, Taihu's face flushed red. He continued, "Sixth young master, Prince Nanming's current situation is not good. He is being besieged by the Southern Ming imperial court and Prince Shiping from both sides. He is already at a disadvantage. If this continues, it is only a matter of time before he is destroyed. It doesn't matter whether we intervene or not. Moreover, you said that now is the time to consolidate the fruits of victory. It is not the right time to be enemies with the great Ming Empire. Since that is the case, it is better to use this opportunity to develop our own strength. Isn't it better to sit back and watch the tigers fight?" Good. Taihu, you are looking at things from the perspective of the big picture. Not bad. You already have the ability to take charge of one side. Very good. Yang Chendong laughed. He was very satisfied with Taihu's answer. Taihu, who was praised, smiled. He was also in a very good mood. Next, something that made him even happier was yet to come. Taihu, the current scale of the special forces is still a little too small. The role they can play on the battlefield is also very limited. I think it is time to expand the army. Let's make a regiment with 5 battalions and 2,000 soldiers. As for your rank, you should also be promoted. Let's make you a senior colonel. What do you think? Are you confident?" Most regimental commanders were usually given the rank of colonel. Some junior regimental commanders were even given the rank of lieutenant colonel. But now that Yang Chendong allowed him to be given the rank of senior colonel, it was obvious that he was being promoted. It also meant that his status had been promoted. In the future, when he faced some of the teachers, he would be able to speak with his chest out. "Yes," Taihu replied excitedly. "Thank you, sixth young master. Please rest assured, sixth young master, the special forces will not let you down." "Good. Remember, now that we have the scale, we also need to increase our combat power. Write a report on how much money you need. I, young master, will personally approve it." Taihu left excitedly. Yang Chendong, who was left behind, was not very excited. The expansion of the special forces, the Ghost Sniper team, and the Eagle Brigade was originally part of his plan. In the past, his strength was limited, so he couldn't invest too much in these special forces. But now it was different. The entire army of the Yang faction added up to about 200,000 to 300,000 people. According to the ratio, these special military forces would need to be expanded. The main hall was silent. Yang Chendong was writing something on the table. It was about the matters after the incident between Guoxinqing and Li Qingsong. According to Yang Chendong, he was almost schemed against, so he had to give an explanation. Although it was as Taihu said, he didn't have the intention to send out troops. But he was not allowed to complain about it. Therefore, Yang Chendong personally wrote a letter to the Emperor of Southern Ming, Zhu Qizhen. The general content was that the Imperial Secret Service under your command tried to assassinate me. After the matter was exposed, they were arrested. Although they said that they were sent by you, I didn't believe it. After interrogation, it was proven that they were Imperial Secret Service members who were bribed by King Nanming. This was clearly King Nanming's plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. In the end, it was proven that I had almost wronged the emperor. Let's talk things out and let bygones be bygones. It could be said that most of the contents of the letter indicated one thing. The Duke of Loyal and Daring believed that Ingzong would not harm him. They were still good friends. However, these were just pleasantries. The most important thing was that Yang Chendong wrote that Ingzong reclaiming the southwest was part of his duty. As an outsider, he couldn't interfere. Therefore, the southern Ming could only take revenge themselves. As for what he could do, since he couldn't send out troops, he could only provide food. However, food didn't come from the wind. It was the hard work of the people of Vietnam and Laos. However, in order to support Ingzong in reclaiming the southern Ming and defeating King Nanming, they were willing to sell a portion of the food. As for the specific price, he could discuss it with the officials of the two provinces. Chapter 950. In the end, the key point of this letter was to sell grain. After Laos and Vietnam became Yang Xie's territory, the land was redistributed to the people. Because of the loans provided by Yang Xie's bank, many people had their own fields and cattle. With the help of chickens and eggs, coupled with good weather, the grain production for more than 2 years had risen steadily. Now not only were some granaries full of grain, but the second season's harvest was also about to arrive. The governor of Laos province, Luan Shaochen, and the governor of Vietnam province, Songjia, sent a telegram to ask if they could sell some of the excess grain in exchange for money, and at the same time, stimulate the enthusiasm of the people to farm. Previously, King Nanming's forces and the Southern Ming imperial court had sent people to contact the two provinces, mainly to discuss the issue of buying grain. Unlike Yang Xie, these two forces were vigorously sending out military equipment. In addition, no one knew when the war would start. Even if there were grain fields, no one was willing to plant them. Over time, the grain problem began to give them a headache. After knowing that Yang Xie's provinces had grain, they wanted to buy some back in case of a rainy day. However, Yang Chendong did not agree at that time. After all, the grain from these two provinces was used to supply the grasslands. But now, North Korea had become Yang Xie's territory. It was also a large agricultural country. With the geographical advantage, they could buy grain from the grasslands in the future. This reduced the pressure on Vietnam and Laos, and the matter of selling grain finally slowed down. After the letter was finished, Yang Chendong personally sealed it after checking it. Then, he called Beta Persei and asked someone to send the letter to Emperor Ingzong. Only then did Yang Chendong let out a long sigh. At the same time, he leaned back on the throne and narrowed his eyes. In the eyes of others, he was preparing to sell grain because he had a lot of grain. However, only he knew that he had a deeper and bigger plan, which was to strengthen the trust of the Southern Ming Empire. In order to meet this requirement, Yang Chendong was not prepared to sell grain at a high price. As long as the people and the government could make money, they would be satisfied. Looking at the Southern Ming Empire, once they realized that the amount of money used to buy grain was not high, and it was even more cost-effective than if they planted their own grain, they would naturally reduce the amount of grain they planted. Like this, if there was a day when he and the Southern Ming Empire turned the tables, he would only need to cut off the grain export chess piece to throw the Southern Ming Empire into chaos, and the opportunity would naturally present itself. Great Ming, although I admire your backbone and courage, but the weak are prey to the strong. Facts have already proven that you are heading towards decline. Since this is the case, for the sake of the Han people, I will replace you. Yang Chendong muttered in his heart as he slowly closed his eyes and breathed evenly. In the 10th month of 1454 AD, Korea became another province under Yang Xie's control. This vassal state of the Great Ming Dynasty no longer needed to look up to the Great Ming Dynasty. Regarding this, there were many different voices in Bai Ming's court, and there were many curses. While Dai Zong and Zhu Qiyu were having a headache, Yang Chendong helped them in their hour of need. At the price of 120 taels of silver per warhorse, he loaned 50,000 warhorses to Bai Ming, which was 6 million taels of silver. Adding on the 5 million taels of silver that he had previously loaned them, the total was 11 million taels of silver. As the saying goes, money is king. After these 50,000 warhorses were sent from Shur City to Talu City, the different voices in Bai Ming's court quickly disappeared. With these warhorses, Bai Ming finally made a decision. After the new year, they would send troops to the grasslands and eliminate the threat of the Wara in the west. Although there were still 3 months because they were using too many troops, and because this was the first time Baiming's Daizong, Zhu Qiyu, had taken the initiative to go to war, the momentum was great, and the preparation time was naturally very long. According to the information sent by the intelligence department in Baiming's capital, this time Baiming would attack the Wara from 2 different directions. The First Legion was led by Yang Hong, with a total of 200,000 troops, of which 50,000 cavalry and 150,000 infantry, including 10,000 firearms units and 100 cannons, heading towards the Hetao region from Datong Prefecture. The 2nd Regiment was led by the Xian Mansion's chief soldier Shi Wanshan, with a total of 200,000 troops, of which 50,000 were cavalry and 150,000 infantry, including 10,000 firearms and 100 cannons, advancing from Sanber to Jingzhou in the Shaojing region. After the Tumu Castle incident, the Great Ming Dynasty was divided into North and South. Baiming and Southern Ming finally revealed their fangs, each looking for their own goal, and started to prove their existence and realize their so-called great ambitions. At the beginning of December 1454 AD, Lung Feng and Wu Sheng, who had lost contact for 2 years, finally sent back news. The political commissar of the 3 divisions, Chen Bo, personally returned to the grasslands Shicheng. When the news reached the ears of Yang Qindong, who was still helping Zhang Yi stabilize the situation in North Korea, Yang Qindong, who was originally planning to return to Chichuan City to celebrate the new year, had no choice but to change his itinerary. Following Yang Qindong was the 1st Cavalry Division, as well as the 6th wife, Luan Xiaoyu. It was worth mentioning that Luan Xiaoyu was finally eaten by Yang Qindong. In the North Korean palace, only Luan Xiaoyu accompanied him, and they met every day. Finally, one night, when Luan Xiaoyu boldly went into Yang Qindong's bed and said that she would be 18 in a month, Yang Qindong finally couldn't hold it in anymore and ate her clean. At this point, she finally became the 6th wife. Before Yang Qindong left, he promoted some officials through his performance in the past 2 months. Among them, Li Zhenju's father, Li Minho, was promoted to a general of North Korea, and was allowed to establish a 30,000-man North Korean provincial self-defense force. Usually, they were mainly responsible for the security of the province, and if they encountered foreign enemies, they were temporarily used to stop the enemy. Li Minho was put in an important position, and Li Zhenju's face rippled with a charming smile. Coupled with the development of her husband, Tianhu, she had a hint of a mature woman's temperament. Speaking of Tianhu, he was the person who was most anxious to leave North Korea. Yang Qindong allowed the 1st Cavalry Division to begin to expand the army, but he could only stay in North Korea for a long time, and couldn't find a suitable source of soldiers. Although he hadn't been idle in the past 2 months, and had been looking for suitable soldiers in North Korea, the results were unfortunately not satisfactory. The soldiers who could pass their strict assessment were too few. In the end, only 100 people were recruited in 2 months, which was far from the goal of nearly 5,000 people. Now that he was finally going to leave and return to the grasslands, Tianhu was full of confidence. He couldn't wait to see the more powerful 1st Cavalry Division appear. He also couldn't wait to change his school star to a general star, and step into the ranks of a real general. At the end of the year 145, Yang Qindong returned to the grassland city. It had been more than a year since he left. His return was welcomed by the city lord, Yu Mian, and the others. Most of the people in the city also walked on the streets to pay homage to their heavenly Khan. Luan Xiaoyu accompanied Yang Qindong by his side, and looked at the people of the grassland kneeling on both sides of the street. She felt honored and happy, and the smile on her face never stopped. This was her man, the most powerful man in the world. Among the welcoming crowd, Yang Qindong saw Chen Bo, the political commissar of the 3rd Division Lung Army, whom he hadn't seen for 2 years. Half an hour later, in the Yang Mansion of the 1st City, the two sat together and listened to the recent reports of the 3 divisions of the Cold Front Army. 6th Young Master. We know for sure that the Golden Horde has changed its name to the Great Horde after splitting into several khanates. 6th Young Master. After our army set out, we encountered heavy snow. Relying on the compass, we climbed over some snow mountains and walked across some plains. Then, we encountered the patrolling cavalry of the Great Horde. After quickly defeating them, we followed their lead and found many tall and fair-skinned people of the Gyuros tribe. We learned many things from them. The most important thing was that under the oppression of the Golden Horde for 200 years, they were extremely dissatisfied and were carrying out all kinds of resistance. Such things often happened in the Siberian grassland when the 3 divisions of the Cold Front Army entered. 6th Young Master, because our radio station was smashed on the way, it couldn't be used normally. Without asking for permission, Commander Wu Sheng and I privately decided to support the Gyuros in the Siberian region to resist the invasion of the Great Horde, and it was quite effective. Because of our bravery in battle, strict military discipline, and fair rewards and punishments, our army has now expanded to more than 30,000 people. After the 3 divisions of the Cold Front Army, we formed the 1st Division, the 2nd Division and the 3rd Division. Each division has about 8,000 people. Also, the Jurchen Cavalry Division has expanded from the original 3,000 to the current 8,000. The news entered Yang Chendong's ears and he quickly digested it. The Siberian grassland that Chen Bo mentioned was the future Siberian Khaganate. It effectively blocked the declining Great Horde and the rising Russian Empire in the northwest of the Great Ming Dynasty. The north of the Great Ming Dynasty was now the north of the current Liaodong, the northeast of China, including the Russian Far East. In ancient times, no one in the Central Plains dynasty had worked hard to develop such a place. At most, they would declare their sovereignty. After all, the climate here was bad, and it was quite difficult to develop with the production conditions of the time. Therefore, the people who lived here were all fishermen and hunters. The grasslands of Siberia had become a dividing line, separating these neglected areas from the war between the Great Horde and the ancient Russians. In other words, if they were willing, the vast land in the Far East would belong to whoever sent troops to the north of Liaodong. That was half the size of the Great Ming Dynasty. It was impossible for Yang Chendong not to be tempted. However, at the same time, there was a realistic problem. It was too poor, and the winter was long and the summer was short. The climate was bad and it was not easy to develop there. Chapter 951. Even if it's not easy, I still have to do it. Yang Chendong quickly made up his mind. Since that place had not been taken seriously and had not been occupied by anyone, or it could be said that those who had occupied it were some insignificant local tribes and small powers. If he did not go and take it, wouldn't he be letting down such a good opportunity that had fallen from the heavens? Chenbo, tell me more about the situation to the east of Siberia. With an idea in his mind, Yang Chendong wanted to know more. Unfortunately, Chenbo couldn't say much after that. Obviously, his focus wasn't on that piece of land. After all, it was vast and sparsely populated. It was mountainous and swampy, especially when the weather was cold, and the time of winter was too long. It really didn't attract people's interest. However, Chenbo was very smart. He seemed to have understood Yang Chendong's intention in an instant. 6th Young Master, do you want to occupy that place? Yes, I do have such an idea. Chenbo was one of his confidants, so Yang Chendong did not hide it and nodded. When Chenbo heard this, he immediately looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. Just say what you want to say. There are no outsiders here. Yang Chendong said encouragingly. Yes. Chenbo nodded, then stood up from the chair, stood in a standard military posture, and said, 6th Young Master, this subordinate thinks that the eastern part of the Siberian prairie is of no value now, and the climate there is very bad. If we enter without sufficient preparation, it is likely to consume a lot of manpower, material, and financial resources. It may even be a huge pit that may take a long time to fill. Since that is the case, it is better to stabilize the Siberian prairie and guard it, not letting anyone invade at all. Then, with this as the starting point, we can develop eastward bit by bit in an orderly manner. After saying that, Chenbo didn't even have the courage to look at Yang Chendong. Now the 6th Young Master was no longer the 6th Young Master, who only had a few thousand subordinates. Instead, he was a king with hundreds of thousands of soldiers and millions of people. Chenbo himself didn't know if it was appropriate to say these things, but considering that he was asked, it was his duty to say what he should say. Otherwise, he would be irresponsible. When Yang Chendong heard these words, his expression gradually changed. He suddenly realized that he had been too impatient. He had only wanted to occupy the land, but he had not thought about whether reality would allow him to do so or what kind of price he would have to pay. Perhaps the wish in his heart was too grand, so he had to race against time because he was not sure if his successor would continue on his path if his dream was not fulfilled after he was gone. Also, his life had been a little too smooth recently, which made him forget himself. That's right. The Far East was indeed not suitable to send a large army into. It was not for any other reason, but because the weather was bad and the roads were difficult to travel. Without any foundation and preparation, it would be a huge project to develop there again. It was very likely that it would end up like what Chenbo said. In the end, it would take a lot of manpower, financial and material resources, and the final result would be far less than the cost. I was too impatient, Chenbo. Thank you for your reminder. Yang Chendong, who had come back to his senses, very rationally gave up on the idea of migrating to the Far East. Chenbo originally thought that his bluntness would make the sixth young master unhappy. If that was the case, his future path would be equivalent to reaching the end. However, he did not expect that not only was Yang Chendong not angry, but he even took the initiative to apologize to him. For a moment he was shocked. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Sixth young master, don't scare me. I'm a coward." "Haha, you're a coward? There aren't many people like you who dare to speak so bluntly in front of me. However, I like it. If you have a problem, you should raise it. If you have doubts, you should speak up. Otherwise, everyone will make mistakes. The higher the position, the more mistakes you will make. In this regard, you've done very well." Yang Chendong laughed. It was the kind of laughter that came from the bottom of his heart. Chenbo immediately laughed. Then he brought up a topic that interested Yang Chendong. "Sixth young master, although we're now spending a lot of effort in the Far East, it's still possible to develop a small area. It's also to find a way for future development. Moreover, there are a lot of things lacking in the Heber Prairie, such as food, war horses, weapons, and so on. It's a good opportunity to move some people there and help the army transport supplies. Isn't it killing two birds with one stone?" Chenbo said these words with the intention of fawning on them. After all, it wasn't good to directly reject Yang Chendong's overall plan. Now he supported sending a small number of people there, which was a sign of goodwill. At least, it proved that Yang Chendong's decision was in the right direction. "Haha, you actually know how to play tricks." Yang Chendong stretched out his hand and pointed at Chenbo, asking him to sit down again. Then he asked with a questioning face, "Since you're talking about the Heber Prairie, why is there a lack of war horses there? And weapons? As far as I know, there are a lot of iron mines underground in that area." What Yang Chendong said as far as he knew was naturally from the experience of the future. In fact, not only was the Far East rich in iron resources, its tungsten reserves were also among the world's top. The tungsten resources were mainly distributed in the North Caucasus, East Siberia, and the Far East. The discovered mineral deposits were basically primary comprehensive ores, accompanied by molybdenum, copper, and so on. Yang Chendong really didn't understand why there was a lack of weapons in such a place. Soon, Chenbo had an answer to these questions. "Sixth young master, you don't know, but as you said, there are still some iron mines in the area. It's not difficult to find them. The difficult part is that there are no people who can produce iron. If someone knows how to forge weapons, they will be treated like a treasure. Sometimes two tribes and forces will fight to find this person. If they can't be used, they will be killed. Because of this, there are fewer and fewer such people. Some people don't learn to forge for their own safety." At this point, Chenbo couldn't help but sigh and said, "Sixth young master, you didn't see it, so you don't know. In some small tribes, when they fight with outsiders, what they use is simply a lump of iron. It has nothing to do with sharpness, and they completely rely on their own weight to kill the enemy. This is also why when we appeared, few people were our opponents. Facing the sharp military sabers, cavalry sabers, and battle sabers in our hands, when some of the local men saw it, it was as if they saw a rare beauty." "There's such a thing? Then the Golden Horde, oh no! Now the Golden Horde is also scarce in weapons?" Yang Qindong never thought that there would be a shortage of weapons because of a lack of technology. No. Large forces would have a place where they could forge weapons. Those places were well protected and generally, there wouldn't be any danger. They would also attract more skilled blacksmiths. As time passed, the bigger the force, the faster it would develop. On the other hand, the smaller the force, the less room it would have for development. It's like raising war horses. Big forces naturally have good horse farms, which are heavily protected. On the other hand, small forces don't have enough strength to protect themselves. The more war horses they raise, the greater the danger they bring to themselves. This is also the reason why they are getting weaker and weaker. Chen Bo's answer was very clear. Yang Qindong kept nodding while thinking maliciously in his heart. In the future, Russia's military equipment was always in the top 3 in the world. Could it be because they had suffered from poor weapons, so no matter how poor they were, they still wanted to develop their military equipment? Having said that, through Chen Bo's introduction, Yang Qindong had a better understanding of the north, the northwest, and the northeast. He even had a general idea of how to develop there. If he wanted to develop there, he had to take it step by step. As people said, rice has to be eaten mouthful by mouthful. Yang Qindong was going to start with the army first. After all, without a strong military force to play a deterrent role, future development was just a fantasy. Chen Bo, you must have heard that the army has developed very quickly in the past 2 years. There are already 4 commanders in the army and the navy. Speaking of the army, Chen Bo was naturally envious. Yes, I heard about it from Commander Hu. Well, how about it? Do you also want to be a commander and have a general rank? Yang Qindong looked at Chen Bo with a smile. I will obey the orders of the 6th young master. Chen Bo did not refuse, nor did he show too much desire. Instead, he stood up and asked himself with the appearance of a soldier. Okay, are you really going to listen to my orders? The smile on his face gradually disappeared, and Yang Qindong's expression became much more solemn. Yes, I promise to obey orders. Chen Bo continued to speak with his body straight. I appoint Chen Bo as the governor of the Far Eastern state, in charge of the local development and military affairs there. When I'm not there, you are the sky there, and you have the right to decide everything. Yang Qindong made a very sudden decision. It was a decision he had never thought of before, but now it was announced. After the order was given, Chen Bo instinctively answered yes. But then his eyes widened. 6th young master, is this me taking off my military uniform? Of course not. Yang Qindong shook his head and continued. The Far Eastern Army will be established under your leadership in the Far Eastern state, and you will be the commander with the rank of Major General. Hearing that he was still in the army, Chen Bo was greatly relieved. He was worried that he would walk out of the army, and as long as he did not leave, he could discuss what kind of army to bring. Chapter 952. Although Chen Bo believed that his commanding ability was not bad, there was still Wu Sheng among the 3 divisions. Compared to him, Wu Sheng was more of a professional soldier. If the 3rd division was promoted to the 3rd army, Wu Sheng would definitely be the commander. At most, he would be a political commissar. Although he was also a military officer, the political commissar was mostly in charge of ideology and logistics. This had always made him feel restricted. Now he had become the commander of an army. Although he was not in the cold front, at least he could make his own decisions. As for managing the development of the Far Eastern region, Chen Bo could only smile bitterly. Who asked him to say that the Far Eastern region was not easy to develop, but they could try to develop slowly. Since he had such awareness, who else should he give this task to? Appointing Chen Bo as the governor of the Far Eastern region, and concurrently as the commander of the Far Eastern Army, was also Yang Qindong's decision. The Far Eastern region had to be developed. Although it could not be as fast as he wanted, it would not be too slow. This required someone familiar with the region. This would save a lot of time. In addition, the situation there was very complicated. If he only sent a civil official like Yu Mian, what would he do if he encountered danger? He had to be familiar with the situation there, and also had to be proficient in both civil and military matters. Without a doubt, Chen Bo was a very suitable candidate. With the matter settled, Yang Qindong chuckled and pointed to the chair opposite him for Chen Bo to sit. You are now a major general. You can't forget Wu Sheng and the commander of the 2nd Division, Luopa. You were all his subordinates. Now that you have been promoted, he can't forget. Therefore, I plan to promote the 2nd Division of the Cold Front to the 2nd Division of the Lu Army. The commander of the 2nd, 6th, and 7th Divisions, Luopa, will be promoted to Major General. The 3rd Division will be promoted to the 3rd Division of the Lu Army, and the commander of the 3rd Division, Wu Sheng, will be promoted to Major General. Considering that he was still in the Siberian plains and was unable to recruit the superior soldiers of the Han Army, he would do it based on the current situation. He only needed 1 elite 3rd Division, 3 hybrid masters, and 1 female true master. What do you think? Of course. Chen Bo had no choice but to stand up and respond. He was already a major general, and there was no reason for him to stop others, not to mention that these 2 people were not inferior to him in terms of ability and experience. After a night of discussion, the 3 generals were decided. Chen Bo returned with satisfaction. Yang Qindong, on the other hand, slept very late. He thought a lot about the problems in the Far East. According to his plan, the 5-star army would have to fight with the Great Horde, and even the Gyros. It would be a huge battle, and the transportation of supplies would become a huge problem. Without a strong backer, if he fought alone, he might not even be able to display a third of his usual strength. Thus, the establishment of the Far Eastern region was imperative. However, how to transport provisions and supplies from the first city to the Far East was still a huge problem. The closest ones were more than 1,000 miles away, and the farthest ones were more than 3,000 miles away. If they relied on people and horses to carry them, how long would it take to complete the transportation of provisions? As the saying goes, before the troops and horses move, the provisions must move first. If this problem was not solved, then no matter what, they could not expect to fight a big battle, or win a battle there. All kinds of images flashed through his mind. If he had a train, then the distance of 1,000 to 3,000 miles would not be a problem. However, the problem was that although there were many things in the warehouse, there was still nothing like a train. Should he use a car? There were some in the warehouse, but the number was limited. If he couldn't make it himself, there would be problems with the warehouse's support. He didn't even understand the basic principles behind it. Once the car broke down, it would be a pile of scrap metal. If he could not make it, and he did not have a train, then what should he do? This problem was very difficult for Yang Qindong. When he heard Luan Xiaoyu's even breathing sound in the room, the word train suddenly appeared in Yang Qindong's mind. Yes, there is a train to transport. As if he had suddenly thought of something, Yang Qindong abruptly said, causing Luan Xiaoyu, who was already in deep sleep, to turn over on the bed. She seemed to be muttering something. Obviously, she was dreaming of something. Seeing that he did not disturb his wife's sleep, Yang Qindong smiled quietly, then took off his clothes and walked to the bed. Lying on the bed and hugging the sleeping Luan Xiaoyu, Yang Qindong was still thinking about the train tracks in his mind. If there was no Yang Qindong, history would not have the first wooden track until the second half of the 16th century. It was in the mines and quarries of the United Kingdom and Germany that were made of useful wood. The cars that walked on the track were pushed by people or animals. It wasn't until 1767 that the price of metal in England plummeted. There was an iron factory owner who saw piles of pig iron that couldn't be sold for money and occupied a lot of space. So he ordered people to cast long iron bars and lay them on the factory's road. He was prepared to sell them when the price of iron rose. However, people found that the vehicles that walked on the road covered with iron bars were not only labor-saving but also stable. In this way, the train track was born before the train. Later, after continuous development, the iron bars were improved and made into groove-shaped rails. Later, the bottom of the rail was widened, forming an I shape like Chinese characters. This shape of the track was stable and reliable, and had been used to this day. In this life, because of the sudden appearance of Yang Qindong, the train track also appeared more than 200 years earlier. There was a train track in Qiqian City that was built according to Yang Qindong's idea, which was used to transport goods. It was only because later on Ryukyu Island began to build cement roads on a large area that the train track was stopped and unused. However, it turned out that the technology had matured. If a rail channel could be built from the first city to the Siberian prairie, wouldn't it be much easier to transport goods? One had to know that there was no shortage of iron ore in the Far East. As long as enough people were sent to mine, there would be enough skilled workers to build the tracks and lay them step by step from the Far East to the first city. At that time, some rail cars could be built on the tracks. It would be much more convenient and fast whether it was pulled by people or pushed by people. This was a bold idea, but also a feasible one. When there was no shortage of people and iron, Yang Chendong firmly believed that this matter could be done well. He even saw the railway line that stretched for thousands of miles, saw a steady flow of goods moving back and forth, and saw the spectacular scene of the Five-Star Army's flag being inserted in every corner of the world. Early the next morning, Yang Chendong arranged for Beta Persei to send a telegram to Chichen City, asking for the people who had followed him to build the tracks and the mold machines that had been made before to be transported to the first city. He had great use for them. There was a strict order in the telegram that the relevant technical talents were not allowed to be intercepted in Chichen City. Those who were named had to be released. Otherwise, once they were found out, they would be held accountable. This was a rather harsh telegram, and there was nothing they could do about it. After several years of development in Crimson City, there were indeed many talents. Their brains were active, and after reading the books that Yang Chendong gave them that could be called divine books, they relied on imitation to make a lot of things, and were constantly studying the core technology. Usually, such people were also regarded as great talents by Chichen City. If other provinces wanted such talents in the process of construction, they would not be able to do it no matter how hard they tried. But this time, in order to develop the Far Eastern region, Yang Chendong finally made up his mind to make good use of these talents. These talents could be compared to the sharp blades of thousands of soldiers and horses. Once the Far Eastern region was developed, with the vast land there, tens of millions of hectares of arable land could be cultivated. That could solve the problem of food and clothing for many people. Not only did he have to occupy such a place, but he also had to occupy it early so that he could benefit early. During the period before the new year, Yang Chendong was basically busy with this matter. Originally, he had to return to Chichen City to accompany his wives and beloved daughter, Lele. During the new year, batches of materials and talents were also sent from Chichen City to Origin City. After everything was prepared, Chen Bo personally went to the logistics division and selected an entire division from the division commander, Yang Si. The division consisted of 4 regiments of 8,000 people. In Yang Chendong's expectation, Chen Bo took about 500 relevant technical personnel and thousands of old farmers who had enough farming experience to embark on the journey to Siberia for the second time. Not long after Chen Bo left, at the beginning of the 3rd month of 1455 AD, Baiming's 400,000 troops set off in 2 directions. They gathered at Datong and Xian Mansion respectively, and then went straight to Wala Yeshin's troops. The situation in the grassland also became extremely tense at this moment. Yang Chendong had no choice but to stay in Origin City. He wanted to watch the 2 sides fight. It would be best if they could fight to a standstill. Only then could he leave Origin City and return to Chichen City with peace of mind. With Yang Chendong staying behind, the new army and the 1st Cavalry Division were on standby. Origin City, including the newly built outer wall of Mabe City, was very peaceful. Every day, there would always be some Han people or grassland people who came to Origin City to avoid the war. Origin City was very generous. As long as you were willing to come, you could always arrange a lot of things to do. As long as you were not found to have any problems, other than Chichen City, there were many other places you could go. For example, the stable Laos Province, Vietnam Province, Cambodia Province, Luzon Province, Korea Province, and the Far East Province that still needed a lot of manpower. In short, as long as you were willing to endure hardships and contribute, there would always be a suitable position for you. It could really make everyone have food to eat, work and work. At that time, this was not an easy thing to do. There was no need to talk about the grassland people. After years of fighting, they did not think that anywhere was safe. It was the same for the people of the Great Ming Dynasty. After the Great Ming Dynasty was divided into the North and South, the two Great Ming dynasties were constantly accumulating strength in anticipation of the moment of unification. For this reason, the people's taxes kept increasing. The people could be said to be miserable. Whether it was farming or doing business, most of their income had to be handed over. Chapter 953. Now that the flames of war were rising, more and more people would be requisitioned. The people who could not stand this pressure regarded the first city as a paradise. It was said that as long as one came here, as long as one was willing to do something, there would be enough food to eat. Just this point alone was enough to make countless commoners yearn for it. The scale of the first city was expanding day by day, and the population was increasing every day. Every once in a while, a group of people who had just passed the examination would be sent to various places to resettle. Everything seemed to be thriving. When the North and South Ming dynasty chose to fight against different opponents, Yang Xie entered a quiet and peaceful period. According to Yang Qindong's instructions, he had to take advantage of this peaceful period to vigorously develop himself and count and integrate more people. This was because once he wanted to go to war, he would occupy new territory, and he would need new troops and people to guard and develop. Therefore, the more people under his power, the better. He was not afraid of having too many people, especially the Han people and other foreign races who were loyal to the Han people. After a short period of peace, Beta Persei also took the opportunity to be lazy. On this day he accompanied his woman Kikij to his mother-in-law's house for dinner. After Kikij followed Beta Persei back to Qiqian City, she had more opinions about the strength of the heavenly Khan. She thought of the wide cement road, the tall buildings that were dozens of feet high, and the electric lights that were as bright as day. Since returning to the first city, she had been persuading her mother to leave with her and live in Qiqian City. Perhaps in order to better solve the worries of the senior cadres and generals, or perhaps in order to better control them. Any military leader above the regimental level, or the local bureau level could apply to have their own courtyard and house in Qiqian City. Beta Persei, as the person in charge of Yang Qindong and a colonel, naturally had such qualifications. He had thought of bringing his mother-in-law to Qiqian City more than once because the environment there was better, the security conditions and even the medical conditions were the best. This matter could be said to hit it off with Qiqige. This time, the two of them also continued to persuade him. The main reason why Badama did not say anything was that her son, Batu, was still in the beginning city and had a post in the new army. She believed that this was her roots and was unwilling to leave. It was a little difficult to persuade her. The husband and wife took advantage of the fact that they had nothing to do today to continue their unfinished mission. Usually, Badama was always alone at home, so Beta Persei hired a nanny for his mother-in-law. She was Mongolian and only 17 years old. She was very agile. Later, she was given a Chinese name, Alian, and Badama liked her very much. Today's meal was also prepared by the nanny. It was almost time for dinner, but he still didn't see his son Tuesday. Badama's face had a trace of displeasure as he said, "Didn't I tell him yesterday? Why isn't he here yet? Is he making his brother-in-law wait for too long?" In Badama's heart, her son-in-law, Beta Persei, was an extraordinary existence. He was able to serve by the Khan's side and gain his deep trust. Just based on this, she would wake up smiling even in her sleep. For the sake of her son's future, as a mother, she should interact more with the two of them. This would definitely be beneficial for her son's growth. Beta Persei didn't care too much. She only had eyes for Qiqige. Batu and Badama were just loved by her. Afraid that his mother-in-law would be unhappy and affect her health, Beta Persei took the initiative to laugh and said, "Mother, don't worry too much. Batu is no longer a child. He's a battalion officer now. It's normal for him to be delayed because of military affairs." "What battalion?" "He was just promoted to battalion commander, most likely because of you." Qiqige, who was at the side, also spoke up. There was a hint of reproach in her tone. "Brother-in-law is such a busy person. How can it be so easy for him to come home? Why didn't you show up in time? Are you going to waste such a good opportunity? It was said that girls tended to side with outsiders. Chichiga didn't necessarily mean that she didn't care about her brother after getting married. She just thought that such a good opportunity to get along with her brother-in-law would be wasted. It was too inappropriate. Ah! In the face of his beloved wife's words, Beta Persei just showed a silly smile. Fatima didn't know how long she would have to wait, and whether her son would come again. In order to avoid the awkwardness, she simply said, "The meal is ready. Let's eat first." "Then let's eat first. Mother-in-law, please take a seat." Beta Persei immediately agreed. He didn't think that Batu didn't come back, because he had a bad opinion of him. They used to have a very good relationship, and he had helped him a lot. It should be that he was delayed by something. The family of three sat together. Alian had already gone to the kitchen. She felt even more uncomfortable in such an occasion. Just as the meal was about to end, the outer door of the courtyard finally opened. There was the sound of footsteps. Batu had returned. As soon as she heard her son's footsteps, Fatima's face immediately showed a happy expression. But before she could get up to greet him, Batu had already appeared, and he reeked of alcohol. "What's the matter? You came so late and drank so much wine." As soon as she saw her brother appear, and he reeked of alcohol, Chichiga complained and then ordered Alian to prepare a hangover soup immediately. Batu reeked of alcohol as he entered the room. Young Air's indifferent expression finally changed. The smile on his face turned serious. "Battalion Commander Ba? You drank? Don't you need to be on duty today?" Batu, who was about to call him brother-in-law, was stunned. Then he was sweating profusely. "Sis, brother-in-law, I don't need to be on duty in the afternoon, but I have to go to the barracks at night to patrol." "Since you have military affairs to do at night, why did you drink so much? Don't you know that Baiming is at war with the world of Wara? The beginning city seems to be safe, but the war is on the verge of breaking out. If that's the case, how can you lead the troops to the battlefield while reeking of alcohol?" Beta Persei's face had become completely serious, and he was even a little angry. He originally thought that Batu was a motivated young man. Even so, it was convenient to help such an ambitious young man within the scope of possible. But he didn't expect that Batu, who had only been a battalion commander for a few days, would be so drunk during the day. This was simply disappointing. As soon as Beta Persei's face fell, Fatima and Chichiga didn't dare to speak. The little nanny, Alian, stood nervously at the side, not knowing whether to leave or not. The atmosphere in the room became very quiet and awkward. After a while, Chichiga finally couldn't help but say, "Second brother, he just drank some wine. It's not a big deal." "It's not a big deal if there's no war, but once there's a sudden war, do you think Batu will be better? He's now a battalion commander in Suhi's Tatar division. Do you know that the Tatar division's military regulations and combat power are second only to the 1st Cavalry Division? If Batu goes to the battlefield like this, what do you think will happen to him?" Beta Persei suppressed his anger and said to his wife reasonably, "What do you mean?" Chichiga naturally didn't understand this. "If he violates the military law, he will be punished by the military law. It's even possible that he will be beheaded. Do you understand?" Beta Persei said in a tone of disappointment. This sentence scared Chichigo and Fatima so much that they tilted their bodies and looked like they would fall at any time. Fortunately, Young Air reached out in time to support his wife. Alian, who was at the side, was also very perceptive and supported Fatima. "This serious? Aya Batu, how can you drink so much wine in broad daylight? If something really happened, even your brother-in-law wouldn't be able to say anything. What are you doing?" After Fatima recovered from his shock, he immediately reprimanded his son. In the eyes of a mother without a husband, her son was her sky and her earth. If something really happened, she really didn't know how to continue living. Although Chichiga didn't say anything, her eyes showed obvious reprimand. Obviously, this incident angered her as his elder sister. She was angry at her brother's failure to live up to her expectations. Batu, who was targeted by everyone, had a wronged expression on his face. He did break the military law in the afternoon and drank, but he had no choice. But now no one seemed to be giving him a chance to explain. Since that was the case, he could only keep his mouth shut and let his mother, sister and even brother-in-law vent their anger first. Speaking of which, Batu was a good boy. He worked hard to become a battalion commander. Although he had to give face to Beta Persei, but if he wasn't, with Division Commander Suhi's temper, he definitely wouldn't have been entrusted with such a heavy responsibility. Usually, he was also very self-disciplined. Things like drinking alcohol rarely happened. This time it was just a coincidence that he was in a hurry. Batu lowered his head and didn't refute. He was like a child who had done something wrong and was admitting his mistake. When Kikij saw this, she couldn't bear it and gently shook her husband's arm. Beta Persei sighed softly. He knew that he had to say something, so he said, "Okay, tell me, why did you drink so much in the afternoon?" "Yes," Batu answered, then slowly raised his head. "Brother-in-law, I knew yesterday that you were coming today, so I had already planned to have lunch with you and mother. But I suddenly received an invitation in the morning, so I didn't come back in time." "Invitation? Who is it?" Beta Persei had been by Yang Qindong's side for so long. Although he wasn't extremely smart, he could always see the essence of some things very quickly. And his intuition told him that this invitation was the source of all this mess. If he guessed correctly, the identity of the person who sent the invitation should not be simple. Chapter 954. In front of Second Yang, Batu naturally told him everything he knew. He immediately said, "It's 6th Commander Yang. He's marrying Xiaofeng today and has invited all of us regiments and battalions to congratulate him. Who would dare to refuse such a request?" Yang Lu's ha ha ha. "Batu, I didn't expect you to not tell the truth in front of me. Do you really think your wings have hardened?" At first, Yang Er was still listening attentively, but when Yang Lu's name was mentioned, he laughed loudly, and there was even a hint of anger in his laughter. "Brother-in-law, why would I lie to you? It's true." It was Batu's turn to be puzzled. He didn't know what he had said wrong or what nonsense he had said. "You still dare to say it's true? You just said that 6th brother Yang is marrying Xiaofeng, but you don't know that I just attended his wedding banquet a week ago. Why is there another wedding banquet so soon? Tell me, if you're not lying, then what is it?" This time, Beta Persei had completely restrained his smile and changed his attitude into an angry one. "It's true. There was a wedding banquet a week ago, but this time he is marrying a new concubine. This is his 12th concubine." The aggrieved Batu continued to explain. He also attended the wedding banquet a week ago, but because of his identity, he couldn't sit at the same table as Beta Persei. This answer surprised Beta Persei. "It's actually the 12th concubine?" Although the young master didn't object to the high-ranking officials marrying concubines, and even said that it was for the great Han Dynasty, it wasn't good to marry so many at once. As a servant of the Yang family, the young master only had 7 wives, but Batu had married 12 concubines. What would the young master think if he knew? Although Yang Qindong wouldn't say anything about such a thing, he still had to consider his feelings. Yang Lu was getting more and more out of hand. Thinking of this, Beta Persei lost interest in eating and stood up. "Batu, brother-in-law has wronged you. Don't take it to heart. This is all for your own good. But you have to remember that drinking during the day is always wrong. Do you understand?" "Yes, brother-in-law, I was wrong." Batu did not dare to blame Beta Persei. He could still tell if Beta Persei was doing this for his own good. Beta Persei made his attitude clear. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to stand up for Batu's day. "Well, if there's such a thing in the future, you can go, but don't drink too much. Just be polite. If someone forces you on such a matter, you don't have to give them face. If someone tries to make trouble for you, you can come to me directly. I'll go and reason with them." Batu was so touched that he nodded repeatedly. "Brother-in-law, don't worry. This won't happen again. Yes. Since you're back, spend some time with your mother and sister. You can go out for a while." Beta Persei gave Batama and Kikij an apologetic look. Now that such a thing had happened to Yang Lu, as the leader of the family, he had to take care of it. Beta Persei strode away. Alian hurriedly went down to prepare the hangover soup. Batama and Kikij were also busy helping Batu take off his coat, to let him have a good rest. After all, it was no small matter to provoke Beta Persei's anger. In a courtyard in the first city, there was nothing hanging outside the door. This was because the servant, Yang Lu, did not know what to write. After all, he was the sixth in the family and had been given the surname Yang. However, the young master's surname was Yang, and he was also the sixth in the family. This made him have too many taboos. However, with Yang Lu's status as a servant of the Yang family and his position as the head of the logistics division, even if the place he lived in was very shabby, it was still as crowded as a marketplace. When Beta Persei came here with 4 guards, he saw a long line outside the courtyard. Many of them were carrying things in their hands, and it was obvious that they were there to give gifts. It seemed to be a matter of course for an official to receive gifts. It was also the best way to connect the relationship between the two parties. If you don't have a good relationship with your subordinates, everyone will make things difficult for you. Then your orders will probably go out of the building. Such an official would not be awe-inspiring enough. However, there should be a limit to receiving gifts. It was really a bit too much to be so blatant. Looking at this scene, Beta Persei was furious and strode to the entrance of the courtyard with a long face. Yang Heir's sudden appearance, and the fact that he only brought 4 plainclothes guards with him didn't attract much attention at first. Those who were able to come here were either rich or respectable. There were even quite a few people who had quite a bit of power in their hands. Usually, when they took action, they would bring more than 10 subordinates with them. If they only brought 4 subordinates, it could only be considered ordinary. However, as soon as Beta Persei appeared, he did not intend to line up. Instead, he walked straight past many people, which caused some people to be dissatisfied. Some people with a bad temper shouted on the spot, "Hey, who is that? Doesn't he know the rules? Why is he cutting the line? Who said he isn't? Does he think he's a piece of material? Don't you know what kind of place this is? It's not a place where you can behave atrociously. Stop him and see who this kid is. Stop him, stop him." The queue was in a mess for a while. Each of them charged at Beta Persei as if this person was their common enemy. Suddenly chaos broke out. The 4 guards who followed him were all on alert with their hands on their backs. It looked like if the situation was out of control, they would either pull out a gun or a sword. Beta Persei did not take any of this seriously. Instead, his face was cold as he stared at those people. The murderous aura on his body naturally spread out, causing those who wanted to come forward to reason with him to stop in their tracks. They were not stupid. They could feel that this tall person was not easy to get along with. If anyone went up first, they would probably be dealt with. A bunch of cowards. Beta Persei sneered mockingly when he saw that those people were frightened by his glare. This sneer provoked a lot of people. At that moment, a few people who thought they had some skills finally could not stand it anymore. They walked out of the queue and headed towards Beta Persei. Some even clenched their fists and looked like they were ready to fight. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely tense. The 4 guards whispered while protecting Beta Persei, "Brother Beta Persei, they have a lot of people. Let's avoid them first." After all, the person in front of them was not a real enemy. They could not just kill people here. If they really fought, they would not even be able to exert half of their strength. "It's okay, these small fries can't scare me." Yang Chendong shook his head, looking very indifferent. After following Yang Chendong, he had seen all kinds of situations. There was no way he could scare him. Beta Persei did not retreat, and the others also surrounded him. A chaotic battle was about to start at any time. At this moment, the gate of the courtyard suddenly opened, and a person dressed as a butler walked out. As soon as he heard that someone was making trouble outside, he was very surprised. Who in this beginning city had the guts to make trouble in front of 6th Master Yang's house? Did they not want to live anymore? He wanted to see who this person was. Did he really have 3 heads and 6 arms? Just as he casually took a look, his originally contemptuous gaze suddenly froze. As 6th Master Yang's butler, and one of his most trusted people, he had seen a lot of the world. For someone like Beta Persei, the people below him did not have many opportunities to see him, but he did not know how many times he had seen him. When he saw that the person who came was Beta Persei, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Then he shouted, "What are you doing? What are you all doing? The sudden appearance of Sixth Master Yang's butler and his loud shout immediately attracted everyone's attention. Then many people rushed over and reported their names one by one, looking like they wanted to leave a good impression on the other party. Butler Yang, I'm Song 7. I went to give you a gift a while ago. Steward Yang, MD hi. We've been drinking together a while ago. You even said that I would cause trouble. Butler Yang. A series of greetings and flattering voices rang out, but Steward Yang ignored all of them and went straight to where Yang Air was. Everyone also made way for him. At this moment, Beta Persei naturally saw Butler Yang and could not help but reprimand him even more angrily. Yang Ying, is this how you look after your master's house? People are lining up to the street to give gifts. Aren't you afraid that it will affect your master and that someone will impeach him? He directly called Butler Yang's name and angrily condemned him, giving the other onlookers a fright. They thought to themselves, who is this? With Butler Yang's temper, he will definitely not let this person off. Thinking about it, Butler Yang might not be much, but he was backed by Sixth Master Yang. That was an extremely powerful person. Someone who could be seen at any time and someone who was loyal and courageous. When the time came, if his mouth was crooked, there would be no good ending for him. Just as everyone was waiting to see Beta Persei suffer, Yang Ying's face was unexpectedly filled with fear. Second Master, why are you here? What? Why did he call this person Second Master? Who is he? Second Master? Could it be Beta Persei? In an instant, the originally noisy entrance of the alley became extremely quiet. Obviously, everyone thought of Beta Persei's true identity. Don't call me Second Master. I can't afford it. Where is your master? Beta Persei's anger had not subsided, and he was not willing to lower himself to the same level as Yang Ying. Master is taking an afternoon nap, Yang Ying said, sweating profusely. In his eyes, Yang Chendong was not that scary because people of that status would not lower themselves to the level of an insignificant person like him. However, Beta Persei was different. If he really dared to make a move on him, even the master behind him would not be able to protect him. Afternoon nap. He seems to be in a good mood. Lead the way. Beta Persei waved his hand and stepped forward. Yes, Second Master, please. Yang Ying no longer had any arrogance. At this moment, he was completely like a filial son, lowering his head and leading the way. Chapter 955. Beta Persei followed Yang Ying into the courtyard, and the people queuing outside the door quickly dispersed. Just now they were criticizing Beta Persei. What if he took issue with them? If they stayed here at this time, wouldn't they be taking the initiative to tell him their identity? No one would do such a stupid thing. After Beta Persei entered the courtyard, he did not wait for Yang Ying to announce his arrival. Instead, he went to the main room and lifted Yang Lu, who was still asleep, out of bed. Yang Lu, who had been preparing to have a good night's sleep, was furious when he was disturbed. He wanted to get angry, but when he saw that it was Beta Persei, his anger quickly disappeared and he said timidly, Second brother, why are you here? When people lived in this world, there would usually be a few people who were afraid of them. There were 3 people that Yang Lu was afraid of. Yang Chendong was naturally the first to bear the brunt, followed by Tiger's Mane and then Beta Persei. Now that Beta Persei had appeared, it was no wonder that he became so obedient. I'm here to congratulate you. The anger on Beta Persei's face had disappeared and was replaced by a smile. Yang Lu did not see that this was the calm before the storm. He really thought that Beta Persei was here to congratulate him on marrying the 12th concubine. He immediately laughed and said, Second brother, how can I trouble you with such a small matter? Marrying a family is a small matter? Then tell me what is a big matter. Beta Persei was still not angry and still had a smile on his face. Yang Lu's face showed an awkward smile. I'm just afraid that second brother will scold me. I'm talking about you. The smile on Beta Persei's face began to fade. Without warning, Yang Lu suddenly shouted, I'm talking about you. How long have you been in the beginning city? And you've already married the 12th concubine. Do you know that the young master only has 7 concubines now? How can you be so unrestrained? What are you thinking, huh? The sudden roar fell into Yang Lu's ears, and he only felt that his eardrums were buzzing. His second brother's voice was really loud. It seemed that it had not changed after so many years. But Beta Persei was the second brother. Without Yang Lu, he was the eldest brother. He had to admit his mistake. He could only lower his head and pretend to admit his mistake. Second brother, thank you for your reminder. I promise that such a thing will not happen in the future. Yang Lu bowed his head and admitted his mistake, making Beta Persei feel like he had not found his opponent yet. Thinking that they had been brothers for so many years and that Yang Lu was now the head of the logistics division, Beta Persei sighed. Sixth brother, it's not that I have to be angry with you. If you really like this kind of thing, you can just find some in private. Why do you have to marry all of them? You even made such a big fuss and invited so many people to congratulate you. Don't you think you're looking for trouble? Also, who are those people outside the courtyard? I think most of them are businessmen. Did you use your private power to sell some of the logistics division's things? No, how is that possible? Yang Lu jumped up. Second brother, you're the first logistics division head. You should know that some things are likely to be discarded if they're left for too long. Young master also said that we have to learn how to make use of trash. That's why I had no choice but to sell them. But these things are all recorded and can be checked. The money will eventually be sent to the higher-ups. Every income has Castellan Umion's signature. How could I do anything? At most what? Beta Persei asked nervously. At most, I'll sell more to whoever is closer to me. But the price will still be the same. We won't lose out. Yang Lu looked like he was making a solemn vow. Yang Er had been a logistics division commander before, and he was the first logistics division commander, so he naturally knew how much power this position had. Not only did he have the authority to manage the captives and spoils of war, but he also had to take care of some of the goods that were transported from Crimson City and other places. And with such a position, it was inevitable that there would be people trying to curry favor with him. This could also explain why there were so many people waiting outside the courtyard to meet Yang Lu. As for favors, it was even more unavoidable. In order to survive in this world, it was unavoidable to have friends. Since the price was the same, it was normal to give more things to friends. At least it was reasonable. With their current position and status, it really wasn't a big deal. Yes, it's best if everything is as you said. Actually, sixth brother, I'm not here to condemn you this time. I just want to remind you. You have to know that it wasn't easy for us to follow the young master to this day. As long as we don't take the wrong path, there won't be a problem for us to live an extravagant life. And we have to know how to cherish it. Beta Persei said earnestly. He really had feelings for Yang Lu and didn't want him to make a big mistake because of this. Second brother, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Yang Lu kept nodding and promising, but there was some hesitation in his eyes. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but he couldn't say it. Yang Lu was willing to admit his mistake. Not long after, Beta Persei left. In his opinion, this wasn't a big deal at all. Even if sixth brother was a little greedy, as long as it wasn't too much, with his identity as a servant of the Yang family, it wasn't a big deal. Perhaps Beta Persei was being emotional, or perhaps he was by Yang Qindong's side every day, so there were few things that could make things difficult for him. In short, he didn't take this matter seriously. However, just 3 days later, another batch of military supplies from Liaodu arrived in the first city, and there was a middle-aged man in civilian clothes escorting them. Beside the middle-aged man, there had been 4 well-trained men. If one looked carefully, they would find that their footsteps were uniform, and their movements were full of the aura of a soldier. In fact, they were indeed soldiers, but they didn't belong to the Cold Front series. Instead, they belonged to the Action Bureau of the Anti-Corruption Department. The middle-aged man who was protected by the 4 of them had a great background. His surname was Wu Wei. Wu Wei's name was naturally not famous in the first city, but if it was mentioned in Crimson City, there would be very few people who didn't know about it. This was because Wu Wei was the deputy chief of the Anti-Corruption Department, and also the director of the Action Bureau of the Anti-Corruption Department. He was one of the right-hand men of Minister Wu Qian. It was obviously not an ordinary case that alarmed Wu Wei, the deputy chief, to come to the first city. In other words, an ordinary case wouldn't alarm someone like him. In fact, he came here for Yang Lu's matter. The Anti-Corruption Department of Crimson City and the Supervision Department had already received many letters of complaint from the Anti-Corruption Branch and the Supervision Department. The target was Yang Lu alone. The content of the report involved all aspects such as money problems, abuse of power, and even the matter of him marrying an underage girl as a concubine. Considering Yang Lu's special background and status, the departments in charge of supervision in the first city naturally didn't dare to casually deal with him. They only reported the matter to the city lord, Yu Mian, who had the duty of supervising them. Yu Mian was also a smart person. After seeing that the people who reported were all pointing at Yang Lu, he didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Instead, he informed his father, Yu Qian, by telegram. Not long after that, he acted as if nothing had happened and didn't care about this matter. However, he consciously kept a certain distance from Yang Lu. It wasn't until the head of the city's internal supervision department, who hadn't received any news for a long time, found Yu Mian again that he said with a troubled expression, "You know what kind of person he is. We don't have the authority to deal with him. Let's report it." Just like that, the letters were finally sent to Crimson City through a secret channel and placed on the desk of the Anti-Corruption Department's minister, Wu Qian. This person, who had once sent his concubine, assistant, and brother-in-law to the law in a fit of anger for the sake of his principles, naturally wouldn't turn a blind eye to these letters of complaint. He first communicated with the Minister of Supervision, Shen Yu, and finally decided to let the Anti-Corruption Department take the lead to investigate this case. If it weren't for the fact that Wu Qian had a lot of things to deal with in Crimson City and couldn't leave, he would have come to the first city himself. Since he couldn't come, he sent his general, Wu Wei, to come. In order to not alert the enemy and cause too much of an impact, Wu Qian made a shocking decision. He didn't inform the sixth young master before he had evidence. This would save everyone from having ugly expressions when they found out that it was a false accusation. Hence Wu Wei came. Moreover, he came to the city quietly and inconspicuously. Thus the investigation began. Yang Lu wasn't in vain. With his position, he had made a lot of friends in the past 2 years. He even had his own sources of information in the supervision department. He was quickly informed that someone was investigating him, but because the person who tipped him off was too low level, he couldn't get more information. However, just the fact that someone was investigating him was enough to make Yang Lu nervous. His first feeling was that some of the bad things he had done had been exposed, but then he denied it. Logically speaking, if that was the case, they could have detained him first and then investigated him. Wouldn't that be much more convenient? Once some people saw that he had lost power, there would probably be many people who would kick him when he was down. However, they didn't do that. Did this mean that the other party was only suspicious and was investigating in private? If that was the case, it was very likely that the young master didn't know about it. Otherwise, the young master could take away all the power in his hands with just a word. With doubts, Yang Lu took the initiative to look for Beta Persei and conducted various tests. The results proved that the young master didn't have any objections to him. At least, Beta Persei didn't hear anything from the young master. This made him feel relieved and angry at the same time. Who on earth dared to investigate him in private? Did they really think that he was made of clay? Chapter 956. In his courtyard, Yang Lu no longer hid the anger on his face and said angrily, "Someone come here." "Master, what are your orders?" The butler Yang Xing appeared in time. "Send out some capable men to scare the other party." Yang Lu did not say it clearly, but Yang Xing understood. As Yang Lu's most trusted subordinate, Yang Xing was in charge of many things related to him. When he found out that someone was investigating his master, he proposed to teach the person a lesson. However, he held back because he did not know the person's background. Now that he was sure that it was not the sixth young master who was investigating him, Yang Lu did not want to hold back anymore. Yang Xing could not hold it in anymore. "Master, please wait for the good news. I'll do it now." Wu Wei seemed to be a reckless man, but he was actually very careful when doing things. He knew what kind of movement this investigation would cause, and what kind of influence it would bring if the news was leaked. Therefore, after entering the beginning city, he rented a small courtyard in a private house and worked independently. Other than the necessary documents and people, he never met other guests in private. Even the people in the same department did not know where he was. At the beginning of the first year, all of his actions were secret. Only some smart people found out about the existence of such an investigation through some things. However, as time passed, after more than 20 days since he arrived in the beginning city, his residence was finally found out. The news was provided by 4 members of the Action Bureau from the Anti-Corruption Department. They said that they found someone wandering around during the day, and they were afraid that the location had been exposed. At this moment, Wu Wei had obtained a lot of evidence about Yang Lu's crimes. Initially, he thought that he should report to the 6th young master after gathering all the information. After all, they had secretly investigated the 6th young master's servant for such a long time. It was time for them to fight for the initiative. Wu Wei didn't expect that someone would come knocking on his door so soon. Looking at the slightly late sky, Wu Wei made a decision. He would do a surprise attack tonight and gather all the main problems. Tomorrow morning, he would send an invitation to pay a visit to the 6th young master. That night, the coal lamp in Wu Wei's room did not go off. In the middle of the night, a blood-stained dagger suddenly flew into Wu Wei's room and nailed itself on his desk. The commotion attracted the attention of the other 4 members who were also awake. 2 of them stood guard beside Wu Wei, and the other 2 rushed out to look for the murderer. In the room, Wu Wei looked at the sharp dagger that was about a foot away from him. His expression became complicated. "Chief, are you all right?" The 2 operatives from Crimson City were extremely nervous. Although Wu Wei was also the vice director of the Anti-Corruption Department, in the eyes of the people in the Operations Bureau, they preferred to call him director. "It's fine. They don't intend to take my life." Wu Wei shook his head. He had once participated in Lung Feng's assessment and passed with his skills. It was a pity that he was too old, and was eventually rejected. That was how he got the chance to work in the Ministry of Supervision. Later on, when Chief Wu Qian set up the Anti-Corruption Department, he took a fancy to him and was entrusted with an important task. That was how he got his current position. It was precisely because his position was high enough that he was able to perceive more things when looking at things. He knew that it would not be easy to investigate Yang Lu, a servant of the Yang family. In the worst-case scenario, his life would be in danger. Now it seemed that everything had come true. "All right, you guys go and have a good rest. If nothing goes wrong, no one will come tonight. We can have a good night's sleep and go see the 6th young master tomorrow," Wu Wei said in a normal voice. When the 2 members heard that they were going to see the god in their hearts, the 6th young master, they were extremely excited. Perhaps they were not qualified to see the 6th young master, but it was already an honor to be able to walk around the Yang residence in the origin city. Sure enough, as Wu Wei said, the night passed peacefully. The next morning, after the 5 of them had breakfast, they went straight to the Holy Land Yang residence in the origin city with the invitation card. Ever since Tuoya married Yang Chendong, this place had become the residence of the Heavenly Khan. On the surface, the gatehouse was bigger and wider than before. The number of guards guarding the door had also reached 30. People, a platoon of troops. Once anyone trespassed without orders and permission, according to the rules, they had the right to shoot and would not be punished. When Wu Wei and the others arrived, they saw this scene. Wu Wei took the initiative to hand over his invitation card, and then the guard took it and reported to the inside. Yang Chendong had woken up early. After training, he had already had breakfast with Luan Xiaoyu. At this time, he was enjoying the cool summer morning in the small courtyard. At this time, the captain of the 1st Guard Brigade, Qiu Vi, appeared and respectfully handed over Wu Wei's invitation card. Wu Wei. When Yang Chendong saw the name and official position written on the card, he could not help but be stunned. Luan Xiaoyu, who was peeling oranges for Yang Chendong, had a puzzled look on her face. "Who? Is it Wu Wei, The vice minister of the anti-corruption department, and the director of the action bureau? Why did Big Brother summon him? Compared to Yang Qindong, Wan Xiaoyu was obviously more familiar with some of the high-level figures in Crimson City. Hearing that she reported the position based on a person's name, Yang Qindong said with a wry smile, "I didn't summon him. I'm afraid he has other important matters to attend to. In that case, please." Although he did not know why he did not receive a report in advance when a high-ranking official like Wu Wei appeared in the beginning city, since he was here, it should be an important matter to report. After getting permission, Wu Wei came to a courtyard after 7 or 8 turns and finally saw Yang Qindong, who had been rumored in Crimson City. At this time, Wan Xiaoyu had already entered the house. As a woman, she knew very well when to appear and when to disappear. It was Yang Qindong's first time seeing Wu Wei. After all, when he left Crimson City, this person's identity was not enough to attract his attention. "Your Vice Minister Wu?" "Yes, 6th young master. I'm Wu Wei. This time, I was ordered by the minister to come to the beginning city to investigate something." Wu Wei immediately admitted. "Investigate something?" Yang Qindong pondered the deeper meaning of this sentence. "Yes." Wu Wei nodded in response. It seems that since Vice Minister Wu took the initiative to appear, there should be a conclusion to the investigation. Yang Qindong leaned back on the chair. No matter what the other party was investigating or what thoughts he had, since he appeared in front of him, it meant that there was a conclusion to the matter. He wanted to see what the anti-corruption department did in the beginning city without notifying him. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he took out a bloody dagger from his bag. Qiu Vi, who was beside him, saw this scene and shouted angrily, "Put the dagger down. What are you trying to do?" "Hey Qiu Vi, don't be so agitated. Vice Minister Wu won't hurt me." Yang Qindong did not have any intention of moving. He just watched everything calmly. Since Wu Wei had exposed his identity first, he was not here to assassinate him. Wu Wei only remembered the identity of the person in front of him when he was yelled at. Immediately he said awkwardly, "6th young master, I'm really sorry. I forgot the rules." "It's okay. You can continue." Yang Qindong stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation. He continued to look at him. Wu Wei was deeply impressed by Yang Qindong's calmness. However, he did not know that at least until now, there was no one who could be an enemy of the 6th young master. Even if Wu Wei had some skills, he would not be able to hurt him. Since that was the case, why should he be anxious? Wu Wei took down the bloody dagger and placed it on the stone table in front of him. Then he took out a stack of documents and placed them on the stone table as well. He said, "6th young master, these are some reports about Yang Lu and the evidence of his crimes in the beginning city in the past 20 days. Originally, I wanted to sort them out before sending them over. However, last night, someone sent this dagger to my table. I didn't dare to wait any longer, so I came over early in the morning." Servant Yang Lu. Yang Qindong frowned slightly. His expression was extremely dignified. He reached out to touch the teacup and found that the tea was cold. Then he said to Qiu Vi, "Get someone to change the tea and water." "Yes." Qiu Vi replied and turned to leave. After leaving the small courtyard, he reached out and called a confidant. After whispering a few words in his ear, he went to find new tea and water. In the small courtyard, instead of drinking tea, Yang Qindong switched to smoking. He opened a box of beautifully packaged Con of Heaven cigarettes and tossed one to Wu Wei. Then he lit it up on his own. "You're saying that Yang Lu used this dagger to threaten you?" Yang Qindong finally spoke when only half of the cigarette was left. "There's no evidence to prove it." Wu Wei nodded, but his words were inconsistent with his actions. This already showed that Wu Wei had such suspicions. However, he did not dare to say anything without evidence. However, at such a critical juncture, someone had come forward to threaten him. Presumably, it had something to do with Yang Lu. Yang Qindong nodded. He admired Wu Wei for not saying anything without evidence. After all, once this matter was confirmed, no matter what Yang Lu had done in the past, just the fact that he threatened the investigation officer was enough to put him in serious trouble. There was no evidence to prove that Yang Lu was the one who threatened him. This only made Yang Qindong slightly gratified, but it did not mean that he was fine. The people from the anti-corruption department had been in the first city for more than 20 days, and they were only the vice chief. It was obviously impossible for them to make such a big scene without any evidence. Especially now that they appeared in front of him. It should be said that they had evidence. If that was the case, Yang Lu's crime would not be too small. Tell me, what's the result of the investigation? Yes, the sixth young master. Wu Wei, who had been waiting for this sentence, straightened his body and extinguished the unfinished cigarette in his hand. He sat upright and began to report one by one. The cause of this matter is that the anti-corruption branch of the First City's Supervision Department received a letter reporting Division Commander Yang. Considering his special identity, the letter was finally transferred to the headquarters in Crimson City. After the final investigation, it was found that during Division Commander Yang's time in the Logistics Department, he used his power to embezzle about 150,000 taels of silver in the form of kickbacks and dividends. In terms of his lifestyle, among the 12 concubines, 2 of them are under the age of 16. According to the rules set by the sixth young master, they're all underage. I believe Division Commander Yang is aware of this. Then, there's an additional violation of the law. Chapter 957. Not to mention the process of the report, just the final result of the embezzlement amounted to 150,000 taels of silver. Yang Qindong's frown deepened. He had once said that he would support the officials with a high salary. If one wanted to make money, then don't be an official. If one wanted to be an official, then don't think about making money. Otherwise, once the embezzlement reached 10,000 taels of silver, he would be beheaded without mercy. Looking at it this way, Yang Lu had already been beheaded 15 times. This made him feel disappointed and gave him a headache. As for the matter of marrying 12 concubines, there were girls who were not even 16 years old. It could only be regarded as a matter of style. In that era, it was relatively not worth mentioning. Yang Lu's residence. Beta Persei's sudden rush startled Yang Lu, who had just woken up. He instinctively thought that his threatening actions last night had been exposed. He knew very well that threatening an officer was a serious crime. No matter how scared he was, Yang Lu still pretended to be magnanimous and smiled. Second brother. Why are you here so early? Have you had breakfast? Let's go together. Eat. You still know how to eat at this time? Don't you know what you've done? Beta Persei snatched the chopsticks from Yang Lu's hand and shouted angrily. Yang Lu's heart trembled when he thought that his threatening of the officer had been exposed. However, he still pretended to be unafraid and said, "What did I do? I didn't do anything." Are you still going to pretend like this at this time? Old Six, are you not going to cry until you see the hard way? To tell you the truth, the people investigating you have already gone to the young master. Do they dare to do this without evidence? I'm afraid it won't be long before they show up here. At that time, it will be too late for you to say or do anything. Young Heir saw that Yang Lu was still acting like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. He couldn't help but angrily say. After Beta Persei revealed some information in his words, Yang Lu was no longer as calm as before. He finally panicked and asked, "Second brother, you said that someone is investigating me. Who is it?" Wu Wei, Vice Minister of the Anti-Corruption Headquarters and Director of the Operations Bureau, Beta Persei told Yang Lu the answer given by Qiu Vi. Someone from Crimson City? Beta Persei's expression changed again. He originally thought that some of the officials in the origin city did not like him. He knew that the city lord Yu Mian had a bad temper. He had tried to sound him out several times and wanted to pull him into the group, but he was rejected. Thus he wanted to ruin things. However, he did not expect that it would be someone from Crimson City. If that was the case, he would be in deep trouble. She remembered that the young master had said that he would give the people who worked for him a good life, but it was best that they did not touch a single silver coin. Otherwise, they would be stretching their hands indiscriminately. Those who stretched their hands indiscriminately would have to pay the price. If the amount of corruption exceeded 10,000 taels of silver, they would be beheaded. The cold sweat on her head could not help but flow down again. The so-called corruption limit of 10,000 taels of silver depended on where and who it was. Perhaps in the current southern Biming dynasty, this number was not small. Even if one did not have a certain official position, they would not be able to embezzle this amount of silver. However, for Yang Xie, this was really nothing, especially when placed in front of a logistics division commander like him. It was truly top-notch. Just a little bit of it would exceed this number. Furthermore, he had also forcefully suppressed himself and only managed to obtain a few 100,000 taels of silver while holding back. However, greed was like a poison. Once infected, it was very difficult to resist. Now, was it finally time for retribution? Even the young master knew that this matter would not be small. In front of the young master, who had a great dream to realize, anyone who wanted to block his path would not have a good ending. His expression changed. Everything that had happened seemed to be in his mind. Young Lu suddenly grabbed Beta Persei's arm and said, second brother, this must be a misunderstanding. Someone is framing me. Second brother also knows about those people from Crimson City. They think that they have contributed greatly and do not put us in their eyes. This time, someone must want to deal with us and found an excuse to attack us, the people around the young master. Then, they will attack the credibility of the young master in everyone's hearts, and then wait for an opportunity to replace him. We cannot let their scheme succeed. Beta Persei was originally very angry, but when he heard these words, his expression changed. Perhaps it was because the few young family retainers had stayed in Crimson City for too short a time. Only Yang Wu remained there, and his attention was focused on the royal palace. Thus, they did not get along well with some of the officials in Crimson City, and there was even a faint sense of competition between them. Could it be that these people really did it? On the surface, they were dealing with them, but in reality, they were attacking the reputation and influence of the young master? Beta Persei suddenly stopped talking. Young Lu knew that he had reached the key point. He immediately continued, second brother, in short, no matter what happens, we brothers must be of one mind. Otherwise, if they attacked me today, they will attack the other brothers in the future. Think about it. When third brother was the chief of security, he dealt with many people in Crimson City. They are simply taking revenge. Revenge? Beta Persei nodded first, then shook his head vigorously. But even if it's revenge, if you didn't do anything wrong, what's there to be afraid of? Second brother, everyone makes mistakes. I was just greedy for some money. I really didn't mean to harm the young master. If something happens to me, second brother, please help me. Yang Lu knew that this was not the time to be arrogant. He should lower his head when he should. He was just avoiding the main point and dwelling on the trivial. Just as Beta Persei and Yang Lu were still in the room, a group of black-clothed guards broke through the mansion's gate. They were fully clad in armor, with only their noses and mouths exposed. Suddenly, the guards of Yang Chendong's relatives appeared. The leaders were Ba Daojiang and Pingyu. These two were also old men who had followed Yang Chendong for many years. They had been with him for many years. Yang Chendong had intended to send them to serve in the army several times, but these two seemed to have set their sights on the sixth young master. Other than the guards, they would not go anywhere else no matter what. Therefore, each of them only had the rank of major, but because of this, they were more trusted by Yang Chendong. Many important things would be done by them. The two of them came here this time under orders to bring Yang Lu back. As Yang Chendong's servant and also the head of the logistics division, Yang Lu could be said to have a lot of power in his hands. If he really wanted to do something, even the current city lord, Yu Mian, had no right to ask or interfere. His mansion had always been regarded as the safest place. However, today someone had barged in. Butler Yang Ying immediately rushed out with more than a dozen guards, looking like he was going to punish them. Butler, they seemed to be from the Ares guards. A guard who was about to rush forward saw the identity of the intruder, and immediately stopped in his tracks. When the other guards heard this, they carefully identified the intruder, and came to the same conclusion, so they all stood still. That's right, sixth brother Yang usually treated them well, but if they were to become enemies with the battle god because of this, they would never do that. Everyone in the first city knew that without the Ares guards, they would not have everything they had now. As Yang Lu's trusted butler, Yang Ying knew very well about Yang Lu's matters. He knew that once this matter was discovered, he would not be able to escape death. Therefore, he usually treated these guards well, so that when such a day came, they would be able to use their strength to at least kill a path of blood to save sixth brother Yang. In fact, this worry was not without reason. It was just that when the situation really happened, the guards that he had prepared with extraordinary skills did not even have the courage to move. At that moment, he was extremely angry, but there was nothing he could do. No one stopped the guards from entering the courtyard, and quickly found Yang Lu's room. When they saw that Beta Persei was also in the room, Ba Daojiang and Pingyu looked at each other, and took 2 steps forward together. Second brother, sixth brother, the young master invites you in. Please don't make things difficult for us guards. As Yang Chendong's personal guards, they naturally respected the Yang family's servants. Usually, if someone wanted to harm them, they would not let them pass. But now the order was personally given by the 6th young master, so everything was different. Second brother. Seeing that the young master's personal guards had appeared, Yang Lu's eyes revealed a hint of longing and pleading as he looked at Beta Persei. Faced with Yang Lu's pleading eyes, Beta Persei gently shook his head. He would not disobey the young master's orders no matter what. He took the initiative to step aside and said with red eyes, "Sixth brother, don't worry. Second brother will plead for you. When the time comes, just say whatever you want to say. Don't hide anything. You know the young master. He hates it when people lie to him." Second brother. Yang Lu knelt on the ground. He was afraid that he would not be able to come back this time. Before he fell into the young master's hands, as long as Beta Persei gave the order to let him escape, the personal guards would not stop him. This might be his only chance. Okay, don't beg me. Reflect on yourself and perform well. Take him away. Beta Persei turned his head to the side. He would not stop the personal guards from taking action. He did not have the authority and courage to do so. Sorry for offending sixth brother. Ba Daojiang and Pingyu stepped forward and supported Yang Lu, who could not stand up due to fear, on his left and right. Then they turned around and left. Soon the housekeeper, Yang Ying, rushed into the room. Second brother, you must save our master. I know. Yang Er nodded with sorrow in his eyes. Although Yang Lu hadn't admitted to some things, he could already see that his brother had caused quite a lot of trouble this time. If they didn't try their best to plead for leniency, it would really be difficult for them to get through this ordeal. Chapter 958. In the courtyard of the Yang mansion, Wu Wei sat opposite Yang Chendong. He watched as the God Master smoked half a box of cigarettes in a short time. He even saw the anxiety and anger in the God Master's eyes. Judging others by one's own standards, the most trusted servant around him turned out to be a big pest during the anti-corruption campaign. Presumably, no one would be able to stand it. After an unknown period of time, Yang Chendong put out the cigarette that had just been lit in his hand. He looked at Wu Wei and said, I already know about this matter. I will give you a satisfactory answer. You can go and rest first. Yes, sixth young master. Wu Wei was a very bold person, but sometimes he was also very rash. Otherwise, he would not have been appointed and reinstated by Wu Qian. But no matter how bold or rash he was, he still had to look at who he was facing. Yang Chendong did not intend to suppress this matter. Instead, he decided to deal with it. This already satisfied Wu Wei. Wu Wei finally left, leaving Yang Chendong sitting alone at the stone table. He did not get up for a long time until Wan Xiaoyu appeared and handed him a cup of hot tea with a concerned expression. Yang Chendong reluctantly squeezed out a smile. It's windy outside. Let's go inside. Wan Xiaoyu accompanied Yang Chendong to the room in the inner courtyard, leaving his slightly lonely back. Yang Lu had been captured and locked up in a very secret place. Perhaps it was because of his special identity, but even Yang Er did not know where he was locked up. It was the captain of the second guard team, Dao Xiao, who was in charge of looking after him. He had received orders that unless Yang Chendong personally gave the order, no one was allowed to see him, let alone have any contact with him. Beta Persei knew that things were going to be bad. He immediately went to find Tiger's mane. He knew that the person closest to his servants was their tiger head. 3 days later, Yangtze, who was supervising the construction of North Desert City, changed several fast horses and rushed over regardless of day or night. After the 3 brothers met, they went to Yang Chendong's residence to plead with Yang Lu. In the same small courtyard, Yang Chendong and Luan Xiaoyu sat together. Other than Tiger's mane, Beta Persei, and Yangtze, there was no one else present. Young master, I wonder how serious 6 brothers' crime is. After Tiger's mane became the commander of an army, his personality had become much more mature than before. When he opened his mouth, he went straight to the core of the problem. It's all here. Take a look for yourselves. Yang Chendong's expression did not change at all, as if he was talking about a very ordinary thing. He pointed to the documents on the stone table that were half the height of a person. After the 3 of them received permission, they all stretched out their hands and looked at the crimes that Wu Wei had committed. When they saw that Yang Lu had used his position and power to obtain at least 150,000 taels of silver for himself, and at the same time, he had married 12 women, 2 of whom were under the age of 16. Even though the 3 of them had prepared themselves for this, their faces were now filled with anger. Based on the things that Yang Lu had done, even if he was beheaded 10 times, it would not be wrong. But could they really behead him? After all, they were brothers. When Yang Xie was still very weak, they were the ones who worked together every day by the young master's side, waiting for orders. Now that someone was in trouble, they should stand up and help each other. After the 3 of them finished looking at the documents, they knew that they could not plead for mercy. The 3 of them did the same action at the same time, and that was to kneel on the ground. Their knees were close to the ground, and their chests were straight as they knelt in front of Yang Chendong. As if he already knew that the 3 of them would do this, Yang Chendong did not even blink his eyes. On the other hand, Luan Xiaoyu, who was at the side, was shocked. She wanted to stand up and say something, but she was Yang Chendong's wife. At this time, it was not appropriate for her to say anything. The weather at the beginning of May was already very warm. After 9 o'clock in the morning, it started to get hot. When the sun shone, Yang Chendong had already brought Luan Xiaoyu back to the house. The 3 people in the courtyard did not move at all. They let the sun shine on their bodies, and then they were sweating profusely. Time passed little by little. From morning until the moon came out at night, the 3 of them were still kneeling there without moving. Yang Chendong did not walk over to say a word. Some of the personal guards who were going in and out to do things also ignored them. It was as if they were not 3 people, but 3 blocks of wood or stone pillars. It was already late at night. Luan Xiaoyu, who was lying beside Yang Chendong, finally could not help but say, "Big brother, are we just going to let them kneel like this? I heard that Yang Lu used to guard the Yang family manor in Baiming's capital for more than 2 years. Did Beta Persei look for you? Or did Tiger's mane tell you in advance?" Yang Chendong closed his eyes and said in a very calm voice, "Yes. It was the 2 of them who looked for me together yesterday. They said that they wanted me to say some good words in front of Big Brother. Although Yang Lu is guilty, but for the sake of following me all these years, I still spare his life." Luan Xiaoyu quickly confessed. Now, she was also the head of Yang Xie's publicity department. She was also the leader of the 5-person team in the Red Nest City's self-inspection movement. If Luan Xiaoyu was a woman without any scheming, she would not be able to do these things. But as long as it was something that Yang Chendong wanted to know, she would never hide anything. This was because she knew very well that if it were not for Yang Chendong, she would just be an ordinary poor woman who could not be more ordinary. She would probably still be worried about her survival. Luan Xiaoyu's confession seemed to make Yang Chendong very happy. He opened his eyes and gently stroked Luan Xiaoyu's arm. There was finally a trace of emotion in his voice as he said, "Xiaoyu, do you know? A dike of 1,000 miles can be destroyed by an ant's nest. No matter how strong a force is, if the government is not allowed to pass and the officials are corrupt, then it will collapse very quickly. This is also why I asked you to carry out the self-inspection movement in Red Nest City. It's just a pity that human greed seems to have no limit." Those who possess will never complain about having too much, and will always want to have more. Even if they have so much money that they can't spend it all, they still want to continue earning. When will this end? Don't they know that this is destroying their own foundation? Luan Xiaoyu could hear that Yang Chendong was a little angry when he said these words. She nodded continuously while gently patting Yang Chendong's chest. Big brother, let's not be angry. It's not worth it to hurt your body. Xiaoyu understands this principle. Many people understand this principle. That's right. There are people who understand and there are people who don't. That's why we have to investigate corruption. At the same time, we have to continuously raise the various benefits of the officials. It can be said that as long as you have the ability and are willing to put in effort, then the money you earn is enough to live a prosperous life. Moreover, it can guarantee a bright future. But now, how many people are satisfied? Even Yang Lu, the person by my side, has changed. He has become greedy beyond measure. You have to know that in the past, they were people who didn't know where their next meal would be. They helped me, and I gave them everything they have now. Why don't they know how to be satisfied? The more he said, the angrier he got. If Yang Lu lacked money, he could have asked him. Why did he have to accept bribes and use his power? Did he not know that there were many people watching his actions? Now that the matter had happened, it would not be easy for him to let go even if he wanted to. One had to know that it was his idea to vigorously promote the honesty of the officials. Now he had to slap his own face. How painful would that be? If this matter were to spread, where would his credibility be? In the future, how many people would be convinced by his words? How many people would believe him? Big brother, don't be angry anymore. At worst, I will come out and save him. No matter what, Yang Lu is still your servant. Even if you want to deal with him, you have to have the final say. How can you do everything according to the law? Doing this will make some people admire your magnanimity, but at the same time, it will make some people bitterly disappointed. Although it is said that merits cannot offset demerits, merits are merits. Based on the fact that I have guarded the Yang family manor for more than 2 years and protected the safety of second sister and fourth sister, nothing can happen to me. Luan Xiaoyu changed her gentle appearance from before and became much more unyielding as she spoke. Luan Xiaoyu had carefully thought about these words for a day. Yang Lu was guilty and there was nothing wrong with punishing him. But since he was her big brother's servant, the punishment naturally couldn't be done according to normal laws. Otherwise, where would her big brother's superiority lie? Luan Xiaoyu was a woman. She was the kind of conservative woman in ancient times who regarded her husband as her sky. She didn't know what it meant when a prince was punished the same as a commoner. She also didn't know what freedom and democracy were. She only knew that Yang Xie's family business was painstakingly built by her big brother. Then he was the king of this power, the only king. No one could stop the king's decision. Otherwise, it would be disobeying the king's orders and going against the king. That would be bad people. No one could go against the king's will. This time, since the king was in trouble, as the king's woman, she should stand out and solve the problem. As for how to do it, she already had a plan and decision in her heart. You will handle it? Yang Chendong looked at Luan Xiaoyu with a suspicious gaze. His face was full of disbelief. Yes, if big brother believes Xiaoyu, then leave this matter to me. Yes, I plan to solve it like this. As she spoke, she put her small mouth next to Yang Chendong's ear and whispered a few words. Yang Chendong's gloomy expression finally returned to normal. His face also showed a trace of relaxation. You came up with this idea? It was Xiaoyu who came up with it. But I don't know if it will work. Luan Xiaoyu didn't dare to claim the credit. Yes, it should work. Hehe, didn't you say that Yang Lu is my servant? Of course, I have the final say in how to deal with him. Hehe, I suddenly don't feel sleepy anymore. Why don't we do something? After solving the problem in his heart, Yang Chendong seemed to be more cheerful in an instant. When he looked at Luan Xiaoyu, there was an indescribable expression on his face. Chapter 959. Big brother, what are you going to do? Luan Xiaoyu pretended not to understand anything and asked. However, she soon screamed, followed by giggles and shyness. In the blink of an eye, it was the next morning. Young Chendong got up and exercised as usual. After breakfast, he came to the courtyard and saw the three people who were still kneeling. They were Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and Yang Si. Get up. With a sigh, Young Chendong looked at the three of them with a somewhat complicated gaze. Young master. The three of them raised their heads at the same time and said in a hoarse voice, I know what you want to say. Sixth Madam has already taken care of the matter. It won't be long before Yang Lu is released. However, he can't be the logistics division commander anymore, nor can he stay here in the first city. Let him go to the Southern Ming Empire to collect intelligence. Yang Chendong, who made the final decision, announced his decision in front of the three of them. No matter what, Yang Lu was still someone close to him, and everyone knew this fact. If something really happened to him, it was inevitable that some people with ulterior motives would think too much. This would be detrimental to the stability and unity of Yangxia. For the sake of the overall situation, Yang Lu could not die. However, although he could be spared from death, he could not be forgiven. It was necessary to arrange for him to leave the first city. As for what would happen after he went to the Southern Ming Empire, it would all depend on his personal ability. Thank you, young master. When the three of them heard the result they wanted, they kowtowed to Yang Chendong again to express their sincere gratitude. Don't thank me. Yang Lu is your brother and also my brother. However, we are brothers. If he does something wrong, he will be punished. No one is an exception on this point. Yang Chendong shook his head and did not accept their gratitude. This sentence made the three of them look embarrassed. This time, Yang Lu was purely courting death. He could not blame others. Since he did something wrong and someone came to investigate, he should take the initiative to admit his mistake and actively cooperate. However, not only did he not repent, but he also sent people to threaten the personnel handling the case. Was this not an additional crime? Fortunately, the young master was a sentimental person, and gave him a way out in the end. As for sending Yang Xie to the Southern Ming Empire, the three brothers did not have any objections. With the current strength of Yang Xie, no matter where he went, his influence was not small. Although the Southern Ming Empire belonged to the rear of the enemy, they did not have a falling out with Yang Xie. As long as he was willing to work hard, he might be able to make a great contribution and return to the forefront. This was also a good way to train himself. The three brothers all agreed with Yang Chendong's decision. In the following time, Yang Chendong first asked Yang Si about the construction of North Desert City. When he found out that the outer city was already built, the development of the inner city was also proceeding according to plan, and the city lord Mao Xiang had also entered his role, and was doing everything. He transferred Yang Si back and let him take over the position of the Logistics Division Commander. Yang Si, the task of the Logistics Division Commander is very important, and involves many things. After you take over this heavy responsibility, you must do it well and strive for a better performance. Let others see that you family retainers are very capable, and can also be given heavy responsibilities. Yes, young master, please rest assured. What happened to Yang Lu will definitely not happen to me. I will definitely not embarrass you. Yang Si vowed solemnly and said from the bottom of his heart at the same time. A young family retainer had already died in this position full of benefits. He definitely could not allow the same thing to happen a second time. Okay, I believe you. And Tiger's man, the training of the new army still needs to be strengthened. I have emphasized more than once that we need elite soldiers, not quantity. As for those who join the army because of connections or because of old age, if they are not suitable, we must be ruthless and replace them. As for the problem of manpower, there is even less to worry about. We can replenish them from the logistics division at any time. In short, the new army must be prepared to go to the front lines at any time and must win. Yes, young master. In fact, we have always been doing this. The logistics division has about 20,000 soldiers on standby. Usually they work in the fields and carry out military training. Once they need people, they will enthusiastically participate. After all, no army is better than our 5-star army in terms of treatment. There is never a need to worry about their enthusiasm. Tiger's man nodded heavily. He almost used his head to guarantee that the new army was an army that could be brought out at any time, and that could win any battle at any time. Yes, good treatment and high pay are the reasons why these people are willing to join the army. Just look at how the law and order can be stabilized so quickly after we have occupied so many places in the past few years. Are these people willing to be enslaved? Don't they have a sense of belonging to their nation? No, it is because we can bring them a better life. We can bring them the life that they have always wanted. After the country is occupied, their lives are better than before. They can choose to work in the fields, to do business, and to work in the factories to earn money. They don't need to live like before with no goals and no hope in their lives. This is everything that we have brought to them, and also the reason why they chose us. But do you know that the appearance of a big corruption will change the world's impression of us? Corrupt officials are all sucking blood. Regardless of whether it is the countries or the peoples, it is all ill-gotten wealth. Once there are many such officials, only the people will suffer. Once they can't live anymore, what do you think they will do? They will choose to rebel and kill us. Therefore, the honesty of the officials is very important. They represent not only themselves but also a force and a powerful country. This time, Yang Chendong said a lot of things in front of the three of them for the first time. It could be said that he was inspired by Yang Lu's matter. After saying this, Yang Chendong seemed to be a little dispirited. He waved his hand and said, "Well, Yang Lu should be released now. As brothers, go and see him and tell him what to do next. By the way, tell him that as long as he is willing to work hard and make achievements, I will see him again one day. If he continues to sink, then let's look at each other in the martial arts world." Yang Chendong made a break between himself and his servant Yang Lu. On the other side, Luan Xiaoyu went out in the morning and found Wu Wei, who was staying in the guest house of the beginning city. The matter of the servant, Yang Lu, had been investigated. Wu Wei had relieved himself of the heavy responsibility. The next step was to wait for the results. Taking advantage of this time, he walked around the beginning city and checked the anti-corruption branch in the city. Once again, he talked about the importance of anti-corruption in front of his subordinates. When he woke up this morning, he originally wanted to go to the supervision branch in the city. Yesterday, they invited him to give a speech. The supervision and anti-corruption departments seemed to be independent, but they were inextricably linked in many things. He must give them face. However, Luan Xiaoyu came, and all the plans had to be changed. In a bright room in the guest house, Luan Xiaoyu dismissed everyone and met Wu Wei alone. "Vice Minister Wu, please take a seat." Luan Xiaoyu imitated Yang Chendong's appearance. While fiddling with the tea ceremony, she looked at Wu Wei, who entered the room with a smile on her face. "I don't dare. It's good to stand like this," Wu Wei said with some fear and trepidation. Although Luan Xiaoyu was more than enough to be his daughter in terms of age, she was the sixth madam. With this point, there was a difference in seniority. Luan Xiaoyu did not force him. She specially fiddled with the tea ceremony. After a while, cups of new tea were poured out. Then, she took out a cup and pushed it in front of Wu Wei, indicating that he could drink it. In the face of all this, Wu Wei expressed his gratitude and drank the tea in one gulp. However, as soon as the tea entered his mouth, he almost spat it out again. Everything was because of Luan Xiaoyu's next sentence. "Vice Minister Wu, this cup of tea is my apology." He knew that the tea was not good, but he did not expect it to be so bad. Wu Wei's face was very ugly for a while. However, Luan Xiaoyu did not look at him. She just continued to fiddle with the tea set and said, "You have worked hard on the matter of servant Yang Lu. I only knew about this matter last night. If I knew a little earlier, I'm afraid you wouldn't have to work so hard." "What does madam mean? I don't understand." Wu Wei felt that there was a hidden meaning in her words. He was puzzled. "In fact, it's nothing. Servant Yang Lu's work was arranged by me. Well, as you can see, the residence of the Yang family in the first city has just been renovated and expanded. The construction requires money. Now there are many places where the finance of the first city needs to invest money. Naturally, it's not good to take money from them for private matters like this. So, I made the decision and asked the servant, Yang Lu, to get the money. That's why these things happened. Haha, I've made a fool of myself in front of Chief Wu. Luan Xiaoyu spoke softly as if she was talking about an extremely ordinary small matter. She was neither anxious nor slow. Wu Wei's body trembled when he heard these words. His eyes narrowed slightly at first, but they soon widened again. He knew that it was basically impossible to punish the servant of the sixth young master. When they came, Minister Wu Qian had said that the purpose of this visit was not to punish servant Yang Lu. In fact, no matter how sufficient the evidence was, if the sixth young master did not agree, it would be useless. Therefore, their task was not to punish anyone, but to find out the corruption. As for how to deal with the matter, the power had to be completely handed over. Now it seemed that the sixth young master wanted to protect someone. As for the words of the sixth madam, Luan Xiaoyu, it was just an excuse. No one would take it seriously. But no matter what, since she had given an explanation, it was equivalent to giving an explanation. The matter should be over now. Although Wu Wei was a little straightforward and was even very principled, it did not mean that he was brainless. The sixth madam had personally stood out. If he still said that he could not do it, not only would it be useless, but he was afraid that he would not be able to keep his position or even his brain. Chapter 960. Investigating the people around the sixth young master, regardless of whether there was anything going on or not, would not be a simple case. In fact, the political significance was greater than the practical significance. If the matter was not handled well, there would probably be people who would take the blame. This would be a kind of provocation to the sixth young master's authority. The sixth young master had contributed a lot to the Yang Xie faction's success today. It was an exaggeration to say that anyone could be missing from the entire force, but Yang Chendong could not be absent. Even now his words still made sense. If something happened to such a person, it would not take long for the entire Yang Xie faction to fall into internal strife. Knowing this, they still dared to investigate the people around the sixth young master. It was not that the anti-corruption department and the supervision department wanted to cause internal strife, but it was their duty. They even had a kind of worry. If they did not investigate the sixth young master, would it make the sixth young master think that they had no principles and were incompetent? Therefore, this matter had to be investigated. However, how to investigate and to what extent were the difficulties? Fortunately, Wu Wei had a good grasp of the situation. The sixth young master already knew everything. Now that the sixth young mistress had appeared to plead for mercy, a suitable excuse was placed in front of him. Of course Wu Wei knew what to do. I see. Then I was too nosy. Showing an expression of sudden realization, Wu Wei cooperated with Luan Xiaoyu's acting very well. Luan Xiaoyu also felt relieved when she saw Wu Wei's attitude. The other party's compromise was enough to prove one thing. That was, the anti-corruption department did not have the intention to target Big Brother. They were just doing their job. Even so, what should be praised should be praised. That's right. This time, we've outsmarted ourselves. If I knew this would happen, I would have told the matter in advance. It wouldn't have been so troublesome. Of course, through this matter, it can be seen that the anti-corruption department and the supervision department's performance is very satisfactory. I believe that the sixth young master will also know. Luan Xiaoyu said with a smile. This was tantamount to settling the matter. The matter of the servant Yang Lu ended just like that. Your performance has been praised by the sixth young master. As for what to do next, it was none of other people's business. Wu Wei knew that the conversation had come to an end at this point. He tactfully cupped his fist and said goodbye. Sixth young mistress, this time, I have been out for a long time. I want to leave with the next carriage to report back. Very well. A sincere smile bloomed on Luan Xiaoyu's face once again. She then waved her hand and Wu Wei retreated out of the door. With the appearance of Luan Xiaoyu, she found a suitable excuse to suppress the matter of the servant Yang Lu. At this time, Yang Lu was also young mistresses, and was being reprimanded and educated by the young mistress. Although Yang Lu's life was saved, he had done something wrong. If he couldn't mentally recognize his mistakes, who knew if he would make the same mistake next time? For this reason, Tiger's man and the other two talked to him earnestly for a full 4 hours. In the end, young Lu kept thanking the three brothers and admitted that he was indeed wrong. Only then did the matter come to an end. Old 6, the young master still has feelings for you and is full of hope. However, you have done something wrong, so this time when you go to the southern Ming kingdom, you should perform well. They've sent assassins to deal with young master several times. This time you can go and investigate these things properly. With third brother, the director of the security bureau, you can rest assured and do what you want. Hu Mang acted like a big brother and said in a lecturing tone, "Yes, thank you Tiger's man for your concern. I know what to do." Young Lu's face still had the joy of surviving a disaster. Young Lu was safe and was only punished to work in the southern Ming kingdom. This was already a good result. At the very least, Hu Mang, Young Air, and Young Si were very satisfied. However, they had neglected one thing, and that was that it was easier to change mountains and rivers than to change a person's nature. No matter what, Young Lu used to be an independent figure. Since coming to the first city for 2 years, no matter where he was the one teaching others a lesson. This made him accustomed to being high and mighty. This time he was taught a lesson by others, even if it was his 3 brothers. However, it was impossible to say that he was not angry at all. Young Lu, who was angry, returned to his courtyard and saw the loyal butler, Yang Ying. After seeing that his master was safe and sound, he knelt on the ground and said excitedly, "Master, you're back. Are you okay?" "Kind of. However, I can't stay here anymore. The young master arranged for me to go to the southern Ming kingdom to collect intelligence," Young Lu said with a hint of unhappiness in his tone. "Go to the southern Ming kingdom? Why, that's the enemy's rear and it's dangerous. Could it be that the 6th young master wants to use this opportunity to punish you? By the way, master, did the 6th young master tell you this?" Yang Ying was nearly 50 years old, so he naturally had more thoughts when he encountered things. "No. From the beginning to the end, young master has never seen me." Young Lu shook his head sadly when he said this. Although he was a little afraid of seeing the young master, he still wanted to see him, even if it was just to scold him to vent his anger. "No wonder he hasn't seen you. It seems that the 6th young master really wants to abandon you this time." Yang Ying seemed to be emotional, but there was more or less a hidden meaning in his words. However, no one knew that Yang Ying, who had been following Yang Lu in the capital of Baiming, was actually a spy for Baiming, directly under the command of Chief Eunuch Jin Ing. No one knew of this relationship except the 2 of them. If there was a problem, he would report it directly and would not let anyone else know. This made it so that not even the security bureau could discover Yang Ying's identity. He had been lurking at Yang Lu's side precisely, so that he could one day instigate a rebellion and use him. In order to achieve this goal, Yang Ying had gone to great lengths to not show any signs of abnormality, so Yang Lu had never been on guard against him. One could even say that Yang Lu's greed had become a habit under Yang Ying's influence. If Yang Lu had always been at the peak of his life, Yang Ying's persuasion would have been pointless, and he might even have exposed his own identity. But now, Yang Lu had fallen to the lowest point of his life, and Yang Ying knew that his chance had appeared. As long as he put his mind to it, instigating a rebellion was just a matter of time. "What abandon? Don't speak nonsense." Yang Lu's eyes suddenly widened, and then he hurriedly looked around. When he was sure that no one was paying attention to him, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then a trace of unhappiness appeared on his face as he said, "All right, pack up. We're leaving for the southern Ming Empire." "Yes, master." Yang Ying nodded in agreement, and led a group of servants to make preparations. Without anyone else, Yang Lu's eyes were not as calm as they appeared. Yang Ying's words were still echoing in his ears, and he could not help but wonder if the young master had really given up on him. 1455 AD. For the Yangxia faction, it was a relatively peaceful year. They rapidly developed their economy, distributed farmland, established businesses, and built factories and schools within their sphere of influence. They were responsible for reforming the hearts of the people and laying down a foundation. Everything was in preparation for the next campaign. In contrast, Baiming and the southern Ming Empire, which had been quiet for 6 years, were extremely busy. The Southern Ming Emperor, Zhu Qizhen, was busy attacking the self-proclaimed Little Southern Ming Emperor, Zhu Huichen's faction with Yunan's Xiping Wang. They had already achieved some results and had established a certain advantage on the battlefield. Baiming's substitute emperor, Zhu Qiyu, sent out 2 armies of 400,000 to attack the Wala Yeshen's faction. They had also achieved some progress, especially the Xian Mansion's army, Shi Wanshan's faction. From Tulu City, they went all the way down to the Yellow River. Using the advantage of guns and cannons, they took down Jingzhou. They killed more than 5,000 enemies and captured close to 10,000 enemies. Shi Wanshan's achievement had stimulated the Datong army's Yanghang. Similarly, in order to gain merit, he also led his army into Hatao, wanting to have a decisive battle with the Wala leader Yes Hen. They crossed the Helan Mountains and surrounded disordered Well City, preparing to use this method to lure the Wala's main force out. The plan was very good, and they had indeed surrounded disordered Well City. When the news reached Baiming's capital, the substitute emperor, Zhu Qiyu, was extremely excited. In his view, as long as he could defeat the Wala's Yes Hen, it would be enough to prove that he was stronger than his brother. This was because Yingzong had lost to Yes Hen in the Tumu fortress. If not for the Duke of Loyalty's timely intervention, he might not have survived. Thinking about the Duke of Loyalty, Zhu Qiyu could not help but feel angry. This Yang Chendong, who had the title of Duke of Great Ming, was actually a person with the ambition of a wolf. Sooner or later, he would become a huge problem for him. Although both sides were cooperating now, it was only because of the situation. He had already thought it through. Once he defeated Yes Hen and conquered Southern Ming, it would be time for him to make a move on the Duke of Loyalty. He believed that under the power of the entire country, the Duke of Loyalty, who only occupied some remote territories, would not be his opponent. Looking ahead, in order to commend the contributions of Shi Wanshan and Yang Hong, he took out 200,000 taels of silver from the already stretched state treasury to reward the 3 armies. He wanted to use the silver to motivate his soldiers, so that they would be more courageous in future battles. Zhu Qiyu's idea was good, but he underestimated the greed of his subordinates. Whether it was the landowning households or the eunuch households, especially the latter, they did not have many relatives in the world. In their eyes, all kinship and feelings were not reliable, only money was real. Once the 200,000 taels of silver were taken out, more than half of it was quickly divided among them. After being exploited layer by layer, when it reached the hands of Yang Hong and Shi Wanshan, the 100,000 taels was reduced to 10,000 taels. Chapter 961. It had shrunk by 9/10. When the silver arrived, the 2 commanders were worried sick. The soldiers all knew that the emperor had given them 100,000 taels of silver as a reward. But with this amount of silver, how much would each person get after dividing it among the 200,000 soldiers? It was better not to divide this amount of money, but if they did not divide it, it would affect the morale of the soldiers. What should they do? When they heard that the silver had already arrived, many generals and soldiers who had made outstanding contributions revealed looks of eagerness. Helpless, the 2 commanders could only take out 10,000 taels of silver to reward those who had made outstanding contributions. However, many more people did not receive a single tael of silver. This caused many generals and soldiers to begin to complain, and the morale of the army began to fluctuate because of this. It was also at this time that Yeshen's counterattack arrived. First, outside disorderly Well City in the Hatao region, 200,000 cavalry suddenly appeared. The momentum was so great that when the news reached the ears of Yang Hong, he had a face of disbelief. How can this be? Yes Hen only has so many soldiers. How can there be so many enemies appearing all of a sudden? This is definitely not possible. The roar was still ringing out in the tent when the scout general, who had made the report, was already half kneeling on the ground. Commander, it's not only the Wala cavalry that's coming, but also the cavalry of the Ili tribe, present-day Torpon. We've already merged with them. Right now, their vanguard is about to make contact with our vanguard. Commander, please make a decision quickly. When he heard that Ili division had also sent out their troops, Yang Hong fell back into his chair with a put-ong sound. The situation was completely out of his expectations. Originally, he had many soldiers and generals. But now, everything had turned around. He had become the one at a disadvantage. In addition, when they were dividing the silver, many of the soldiers were still dissatisfied. With such morale, how could they fight against the enemy? Retreat to Helan Mountain and wait for reinforcements at Ningxia Garrison. Yang Hong knew that time did not wait for anyone. He quickly gave the order. Retreating without meeting the enemy was because they did not have a proper plan. This caused the formation of the 200,000 Ming army to be messed up. Using this opportunity, the Walla and Ili division launched a frenzied attack. The Walla army that was surrounded in disorderly Well City also took the opportunity to kill their way out. Under the pincer attack, the Baiming army was defeated. More than 10,000 men died, 40,000 were captured, and many escaped. Even the 100 redcoat cannons were lost. Only 10,000 men from the firearm unit retreated. When Yang Hong brought his army back to Ningxia Garrison, the 200,000 men only. This tragic situation made Yang Hong feel like vomiting blood. But the situation made him bite the bullet and ask for reinforcements from Baiming. Yang Hong in Hutao land was defeated. Yes Hen was busy cleaning up the battlefield. While catching the deserters and settling the prisoners, he also ordered General Kun Sa to lead 30,000 men towards Lang Mountain. He wanted to go through Lang Mountain and Yin Mountain to break the siege of Shajing City. But his real purpose was to attack the Baiming Xianfu army there. After surrounding Shajing City for nearly 2 months, Shi Wanshan, who saw that the enemy had run out of food and was about to take down the city, suddenly received an urgent report from a scout. They had encountered too many defeated soldiers in front. They all said that Yang Hong was defeated. Now Ili Division's cavalry was heading towards the Shajing city. Arriving in front of the map, Shi Wanshan quickly determined that they would become the next target of Walla and Ili Division's allied forces. Their military strength was not far below the enemy. Shi Wanshan had no choice but to give up on Shajing City that was about to be in his hands. He even gave up on Jingzhou City that he had just taken down, and retreated to Sambuchuan behind him. Shi Wanshan was very clear that Jingzhou City was a lone city. Once the army retreated there, if the reinforcements did not arrive in time, just the 200,000 men army's food and drink would be enough to crush the city. Therefore, when making this decision, even though they knew that they would be punished for abandoning the city, no matter if it was Deputy Commander Ancient River, Ning Wenfeng, or eunuch Deng Chong, none of them had any doubts. More and more Datong Prefecture soldiers retreated from the battlefield and took the route of Jingzhou City. The appearance of these 50,000 people caused Shi Wanshan's army's morale to be even more lax. Some of the soldiers who did not know the truth actually followed these deserters, causing chaos to appear in the Xian Prefecture soldiers who were affected. Under the urgent military situation, Shi Wanshan did not have time to make any more arrangements. He could only watch as chaos appeared in the army and retreated to Sambuchuan City behind him. The enemy chased too hastily. Sambuchuan City was not big. Even if the 4 gates were wide open, they would not be able to let in 200,000 men army in a short period of time. Many soldiers saw Kun Sa and his 30,000 steel cavalry chasing behind them. They had no choice but to give up on entering the city and head northeast. Their target was very clear. It was the largest city in the grassland, Shicheng. Many of them had heard of it before. It was a paradise for the Han people. As long as they went there, they could earn a lot of money and protect their own safety. 50,000 Datong deserters and 10,000 Xian Manor deserters who were affected. A total of 60,000 people were madly marching toward the first city. With such a huge commotion, the scouting troop naturally reported the news to Yang Chendong at the first possible moment, and reported it to him. Haha, 60,000 young and able-bodied men. This is good stuff. Take them all. It would be a waste not to take advantage of a free opportunity. Yang Chendong would never give up such an opportunity. He ordered the logistics division to open a shelter between Mount Saihan and Tulu City. At the same time, he ordered the new army to go there and take charge of the security work. In addition to preventing these 60,000 deserters from causing trouble, there was another more important purpose. It was to prevent the cavalry from charging in. General Kunsa chased all the way here. Other than picking up some weapons and supplies left behind by the Biming soldiers on the way, he only captured 1,000 deserters. This made him very unhappy. When the army arrived at Sambulakwan, they saw that it was already heavily guarded. After seeing that the city tower was full of Biming soldiers, Kunsa, who did not bring any siege weapons, gave up on taking over the city. Instead, he continued to head north. He had his eyes on the 60,000 deserters. If he could intercept all of them and use them for his own purposes, it would be a great victory. Both sides had the same goal. The 5-star army and the Biming forces met on the grassland at the same time. Hundreds of shelters had been built. The Biming soldiers who escaped here could finally put down their worries. One by one, they lined up and entered to register in an orderly manner. They were ready to enter Shurching and join the logistics division. Around them were more than 20,000 cavalry soldiers. It was the new army led by Tiger's Man. Looking south from here, they could vaguely see the grassland cavalry army coming from afar. Kunsa rode on his horse. Beside him were valiant warriors. Just as they were moving forward, the vanguard general and Keegan appeared in front of him on their horses. "General, there is a large number of 5-star army soldiers with the 5-star flag in front." "5-star army? The army of the Heavenly Khan?" Another deputy general, Wooly Ji, said. "General, before we came, General Yeshen repeatedly told us not to be enemies with the 5-star army." "Look. What are you looking at?" Kunsa's face was full of disdain. As the generals of the Ili army, their territory was not connected to the 5-star army. What they knew and understood were only some rumors. Although this loyal duke of the Ming Dynasty had many titles, such as the Heavenly Khan, the God of War, the Messenger of the Tungri Heaven, and so on, Kunsa did not care about any of these. He only worshipped powerful strength. "How many people do they have?" "A lot. Maybe not as many as we do, but it's not much different," Keegan reported. "Haha, if they don't have as many as we do, what is there to be afraid of? We chased these 60,000 Ming Dynasty soldiers all the way here. We are about to get them, and now you want us to leave? How can there be such a thing in the world? How about this, Keegan, you go and talk to them. We won't make things difficult for them. Don't the Han people have a saying that when we meet, we will share half? Since that's the case, let them give us 30,000 prisoners, and we will withdraw." "Negotiate? But what if they don't agree?" Keegan did not think that the other party would listen to him at this time. After all, no one would easily agree to take out the fat meat in their mouth. "Don't agree? Then not only do we want these 60,000 people, we also want these 5-star army soldiers as captives. We also want to take them to the Shur city behind him. I heard that it is the largest city in the grassland." I really want to see it," Kunsa said heroically. In the past, the Tatar tribe was suppressed by the great Khan of Tuachuo-Buhua, so it was difficult for the Ili army to get their hands on this place. However, it was different now. Tuachuo-Buhua was dead, and the Tatar forces had fallen apart. They also had a relationship with Yeshen. Now there was no one who could suppress them. What was there to be afraid of? Furthermore, people had always said that the Han people were a bunch of herbivores. They valued Confucianism, which was the principle of being a person. It was said that the high officials in the imperial court were all led by these people. On the other hand, the military officers had a lower status. What was so scary about such a race and power? Perhaps as soon as his cavalry charged, these people would be frightened and flee in all directions, just like those Ming soldiers outside disorderly Well City. Didn't they flee when they saw them coming? Kunsa treated the 5-star army as the Ming army. This was his biggest mistake. After receiving the order, Keegan turned around and returned to the front of the army. Then he led 50 cavalrymen and went straight to the camp of the new army. 3 miles in front of the camp, they were surrounded by hundreds of cavalrymen of the reconnaissance group. The commander, Dingshan, rode on a maroon horse and appeared in front of Keegan at a steady pace, blocking the cavalrymen's path. Chapter 962. Go, call your Duke of Loyalty out. I have something to ask him. Kagan rode on his horse and did not care about the cavalry that outnumbered him. Just like Kun Sa, he did not care about the great Ming Dynasty's cavalry. When Ding Shan appeared, he originally wanted to ask the other party what was the matter and why they were here. He didn't think that she would be so arrogant, directly asking to see the sixth young master. She even had such an arrogant look on her face. His anger immediately flared up. Who was the sixth young master? In the hearts of the soldiers, he was like a god. In the eyes of some people, he was like a second parent. In the military camp, when you were angry or drunk, you could scold anyone. Even if you achieved outstanding military service, you could point at your superior and scold him for a while. At most, you could just apologize after sobering up, and everyone would still be good brothers and comrades. However, no matter what, no one dared to speak ill of the sixth young master. This was because they would be ostracized and criticized by everyone else. In the best case, they would immediately be discharged from active service. In the worst case, they would be punished or even beheaded in public. With such a noble authority, the person who came dared to ask to see him, and even acted as if it was only natural. There was no smile on Ding Shan's face. It was as if he did not understand. He asked again, "You want to see the Duke of Loyalty?" "That's right." Kagan nodded, still with his nose in the air. "Okay, then I'll take you to see him." Ding Shan nodded. Although it was said that envoys were not killed when two armies fought, these people actually looked down on the sixth young master. This was equivalent to insulting all the soldiers of the five-star army. This was a threshold that could not be crossed. When he heard that Ding Shan would take him to see the Duke of Loyalty, Kagan immediately calmed down. He knew that as long as he showed his ruthless side, these Han cavalry would not dare to disobey. Well, the facts proved his conjecture. However, he did not know that his guess was not even half correct. Because in the next second, Ding Shan taught him how to be a person. He raised his right hand up high, and then brought it down abruptly. "Tie them all up," he said. Even though some of the cavalrymen were prepared to resist, their resistance was futile in the face of the scouts who outnumbered them by several times. In Yang Xie's army, the strongest was naturally the Lung Feng, followed by the cavalry. The 1st Cavalry Division was even more powerful than the Cold Vanguard. In fact, when they weren't involved in sieges, they were even more powerful than the Cold Vanguard. However, there was another force that was also very strong, and that was the reconnaissance force. Being able to become a scout, especially a qualified cavalry scout, meant that they were 1 in 100. Whether it was their skills, horsemanship, or adaptability, they were all outstanding warriors. When such a group of people formed into a large scale, one could imagine how powerful such an army would be. Perhaps they were not as good as the world's #1 cavalry division, but they were definitely not too far off. Asking them to deal with the ordinary cavalry of Ely could only be described as using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Kagan was the most pitiful. Just a moment ago, he was still arrogant and looked down on everyone. In the next moment, Ding Shan whipped him. The strong inertia coupled with the fact that he was not prepared made him fall off his horse. Following that was a series of punches and kicks. When he looked up again, his entire body was tied up with ropes and he was a captive. Not only him, but the 50 cavalrymen he brought with him were also captives. Some of the cavalrymen who resisted fiercely had a few knife wounds on their bodies. Blood dripped down mercilessly. There's no need to bandage them. That would be a waste of our resources. Send them back to the headquarters of the First Army. Ding Shan revealed a fierce gaze and gave the order. If it was any other time, he would not treat the enemy's messenger like this. After all, on the battlefield, there were always rules to follow. But today, Kagan spoke so rudely that there was no need for him to be polite anymore. Even if he were to go to the headquarters, no one would be able to say anything wrong. In fact, they might even praise him instead. In the headquarters, Commander Tiger Mane and Deputy Commander Shibi were looking at the sand table in front of them. They were making plans for the aftermath of the emergency when they heard a soldier report that Commander Ding Shan of the reconnaissance team had arrived. Accompanying him were 50 Ely cavalry captives. Captives? I don't think we ordered a battle. Commander Tiger Mane was puzzled. Then he shook his head. This Ding Shan, did he kidnap the enemy's messenger? That's against the rules. Haha, Commander, perhaps there's something else. Let's talk about it when we meet them. Vice Commander Shibi also smiled. Based on his understanding of Ding Shan, this person was a smooth and slick character who rarely acted impulsively. But then again, an impulsive person would never become the commander of the reconnaissance team. Then let's call them in. Tiger Mane thought about it and decided to meet with Ding Shan first. Soon, Ding Shan entered the tent, carrying Hikagen, who was tied up tightly behind his back. As soon as he came in, he threw him to the ground, causing him to fall flat on his face. Then he saluted Hu Meng and Shibi. Commander, Deputy Commander, this person wanted to negotiate with us, but he spoke rudely. I brought him here. What's going on? Tiger Mane's face darkened. After all, they were messengers. If there was no good reason to treat them like this, it would be unreasonable. It's like this. Ding Shan knew that he had to explain the situation clearly. Otherwise, he would be in the wrong. Therefore, he repeated what he had said to Keegan. As soon as Ding Shan finished speaking, a large foot suddenly kicked over, leaving a mark on Hikagen's face. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Perhaps it was because he used too much force, even his snot and saliva flowed out. Needless to say, it was Tiger Mane who kicked Hikagen. How dare he disrespect the young master? Just based on this, it would not be too much to kill him. Clang. Another kick was sent out. This time it was Shibi who did it. After being used by Yang Chendong for so long, he had always wanted to repay him. But now someone dared to look down on the sixth young master. Based on this, if he did not kick Hikagen, he would not be able to vent his anger. Hikagen, who had been brought into the tent, thought that he had found a place to seek justice. However, he did not expect to be kicked twice in a row. The kicks were not light either. He could feel the pain on his face, but because his mouth was gagged, he could not say anything. Deputy Commander, I don't think there's any need to hesitate. Let's just attack. Tiger Mane said as if he had not vented his anger after kicking Hikagen. I think so. And once we attack, we must injure them severely. This person should be of some use. Shibi looked at Hikagen, who was lying on the ground with a face full of grievances. His eyes revealed a terrifying smile. Hikagen was unlucky. He had only said one disrespectful sentence, and he was ruthlessly beaten up. What made him even more confused was that when the three Han people looked at him, they all revealed expressions of interest. Because he didn't understand Chinese, he couldn't understand what they were thinking and what they were talking about. He could only feel that there was a deeper meaning in their gazes, and he couldn't help but feel his chrysanthemum tighten. Hikagen thought too much. No one was interested in him. They were only interested in his identity and had nothing to do with his body. Then he was brought out of the tent and his nose was cut. In the 5-Star Army's military rules, this was no different from a dead person. He thought that this was a punishment from the enemy and that he was destined to die. But once again, things went beyond Hikagen's expectations. He was let go just like that. Along with him were 50 cavalrymen. But 3 of them had already become corpses, due to excessive bleeding. Their horses and sabers were returned to them. Then they were let go just like that. As if to humiliate him, Hikagen was forced to walk around the new army camp, so that every soldier could see his miserable state. Knowing that he was being humiliated, Hikagen's eyes were filled with tears but his gaze was resolute. This was because he was using this method to observe the 5-Star Army's camp. Needless to say, he gained quite a lot. For example, he saw many soldiers eating and drinking together. Some even fell asleep in the open space of the camp. But in the face of all this, no one cared. Just you wait. With such lax military discipline, you will not be a match for our 30,000 cavalrymen. I will definitely take revenge for this humiliation. Hikagen thought hatefully in his heart. After a round of running around the barracks, it was already afternoon. He and Keegan were released. Once he was a mile away from the 5-Star Army's reconnaissance team, Hikagen spurred his horse and rushed back to his own camp. There was only one thing left in his heart: revenge. In the Ili camp, Kunsa was waiting for news. When he arrived, he saw Hikagen with blood on his face. After taking off his black scarf, he looked terrifying. When he saw him, Kunsa immediately asked, "Who are you?" Just this one sentence made Hikagen cry. "General, look carefully. I am your vanguard, Hikagen." "Ah, you are Hikagen. How did you end up like this?" Kunsa was puzzled. He really could not understand. Hikagen was fine when he went out. How did he come back with a face covered in blood? He could not even recognize him. At that moment, Hikagen told Kunsa everything that had happened to him. Of course, he did not exaggerate. In short, the 5-star army was too arrogant. They did not follow the rules at all, and did not take their 30,000 cavalrymen seriously. Most importantly, their military discipline was very lax. Chapter 963. Lack of discipline? How do you know that? Kunsa caught the main point. They wanted to humiliate me. After cutting off my nose, they walked around the camp. What they didn't know was that I saw their true colors. Oh, some of the soldiers were eating and drinking. Some of them were sleeping in broad daylight. They didn't look like an army that was good at war. "General, as long as you give me 5,000 cavalrymen, I will be able to break their morale with a single charge. I will be able to defeat them and make them flee in all directions." Hikagen said confidently. Good. Kunsa laughed when he finally heard some useful information. He had never believed that the Han cavalry would be so powerful. In his eyes, the reason why they said that was because they did not want him to be the first one to gain merit. That was why they said that, to scare him. Now that Hikagen saw it with his own eyes, he believed in his own judgment even more. The sky was getting dark, and it was just past the 15th day of the month. The moon was bright, and he had the idea of sneaking into the camp. "I order." Kunsa's confident voice came from the tent. In the camp of the new army, Tiger's Man and Shibi had come up with 2 battle plans. They gathered all the officers above the regimental level and announced their orders. Finally, there was a big battle to fight. All the officers were very excited. It had been 2 years since they eliminated Fan Yuhai and unified the Mongolian tribes in the north of the Gobi Desert. During this period of time, they had been constantly training their troops and were itching for a fight. Now that they finally had a chance to show off their skills, none of them wanted to give it up. Everyone took the initiative to be the main attacker. 30,000 cavalrymen. There's no need to fight. Everyone will have meat to eat. But I'll say this first. If anyone dares to retreat during a battle, they'll only be fit to be the reserve team the next time there's a mission. Tiger's Man glanced at every officer in the meeting. There was a warning and reminder in his eyes. "Don't worry, Commander. This is our new army's chance to shine again. We won't let you down." "That's right. If our light cavalry regiment drop the chain and let them escape, then you can take my head as the regiment commander. If I can't break through the enemy's battle formation in the first charge, I don't want my head anymore." All the officers spoke one by one, made their stand, and even made military orders. Tiger's Mane nodded excitedly. "All right, I'll remember what you've said. Please remember that military law is merciless. If there's a problem, you'll have to be prepared to be punished by military law." Tiger's Mane couldn't be blamed for being so careful. There hadn't been any major battles in the past 2 years, and many of the new soldiers in the army hadn't really seen blood. Although the training had been targeted, a real battlefield and a drill were 2 completely different things. Any underestimation of the enemy could cause irreparable losses. In order to eliminate the enemy, she and the military staff made a total of 2 plans. The first plan was that if the enemy attacked the camp at night, they would beat them at their own game. The second plan was that if the enemy didn't attack the camp, they would charge at dawn. That was when the enemy's defense was at its weakest. The night came as expected. The moon hung high in the sky, shining down on the grassland. It allowed Ely to see the army clearly from afar. At the same time, their movements were perfectly captured by the scouts. They're here. They're really moving out." After the scouts reported the news to the military, Tiger's Man rubbed his hands in excitement. However, when he heard that the enemy only had 5,000 cavalry, he couldn't help but reveal a disappointed expression. "They only sent so few troops? It's not enough. Haha, Commander, don't worry. They're obviously looking down on us. Since that's the case, we just need to advance to the second plan. She seemed to have understood the thoughts of his opponent. He must have let Hikigan slip around during the day to show his weakness. Since that was the case, he would let them know the consequences of trusting his own eyes. Yes, that's right. Tiger's man nodded heavily. He then looked at the messenger and said, "Order the direct troops to stay behind and attack the enemy. The Tatar division will flank the enemy from the left flank. The recruit division will flank the enemy from the right flank. The light cavalry division will circle the enemy from the rear. The heavy cavalry division, the scouts, and the military will charge at the enemy from the front in an hour. Once the 2 red signal flares are used, the entire army will attack." After the order was given, a few messengers moved out and spread the news that the second plan was to be carried out in advance. Immediately, the various divisions and regiments that were already prepared on the outskirts of the camp all went to their respective destinations. Only the direct troops were left behind to prepare for an ambush. Hikigan's face was wrapped in a black cloth, covering his somewhat frightening face. He led 5,000 cavalry and charged straight at the enemy. When he was only a mile away from the camp of the new army, he still didn't see anyone appear to stop him. He only saw a few 5-star army soldiers that were in charge of night patrol running around. He couldn't help but let out a victorious smile. Everything was as he had expected. The new army was just for show. He didn't think that they would dare to attack at night. Since that was the case, he would kill to his heart's content and take revenge for what happened during the day. All of you charge. It's time to kill the enemy. He raised his saber high and laughed heartily with Kagan. He followed the first echelon into the barracks of the new army. Then, he bent his body slightly and chopped at the curtain of a tent. He forcefully tore a hole nearly 10 feet wide in it. However, the expected scene of the enemy sleeping soundly, or panicking didn't appear. With the help of the bonfire in the camp, they saw an empty tent. Not to mention a single person, there wasn't even a blanket to be seen. This was clearly an empty military tent. There was nothing inside. Just from this point alone, it was clear that no one had lived in it. One of the tents was empty. Kagan had a bad feeling about this, but he still continued to cut down a few more tents. Reality told him that there were no opponents in any of the tents, nor were there any items. At this moment, no matter how stupid he was, he knew that this was an empty tent. In other words, he had been tricked. Not good. This is the enemy's trap. Retreat. Seeing that his hopes were dashed, Hikigan felt a chill run down his spine. Hikigan shouted for the army to retreat. Even if they wanted to retreat now, it was clearly too late. Because right at this moment, countless cavalry suddenly appeared in the darkness around the large tent, each of them holding fiery bows. Under the loud shout of Commander Dengyu, round after round of fire arrows flew through the air, landing in the midst of the 5,000 cavalry under the command of the Ely army. The flaming arrows were like meteors streaking across the sky, landing on the cavalrymen. One by one, the soldiers screamed, howled, fell off their horses, rolled on the ground, or galloped away aimlessly, knocking down their comrades one after another. Under the rain of fire arrows, the 5,000 cavalrymen's formation was thrown into chaos, drowning out Hikigan's order to retreat. All units charge. Dengyu pulled out his saber after firing 3 arrows in a row. With a loud shout, he led the charge towards the surrounded cavalrymen. What followed was the sound of thousands of horses galloping from each camp. One side came prepared, while the other side was panicking. One side had high morale, while the other side had no will to fight. This was not a fair battle to begin with. After a few charges, the 5,000 cavalrymen of the Ely army were either dead or injured. The outcome was decided. In the main camp of the Ely army, one could vaguely see the flames of the new army camp a few miles away. Vice General Wu Liji smiled as he reported the good news to General Kun Sa. "General, it seems like Hikigan has succeeded." "Haha, I've already said that the Han cavalrymen are nothing to be afraid of." Kun Sa laughed as if everything was within his expectations. "General, should we do something too? Why don't I bring a group of cavalrymen to support them? After all, there are more than 20,000 enemies." Even if it's to capture prisoners, we'll need help. Wu Liji took the opportunity to say. Obviously, he did not want to see Hikagen take all the glory and steal all the credit. Kun Sa knew what he was thinking. With 5,000 cavalrymen, capturing several times the number of enemies would not be difficult. However, as a general, he had to learn to be fair. Otherwise, he would not be able to convince his subordinates. Kun Sa nodded and said, "All right, I'm a little worried about Hikagen. How about this? I'll give you 5,000 cavalrymen. Go and help them." "Thank you, General." Wu Liji placed his right hand on his left chest and bowed. He then turned and strode away. Kun Sa, on the other hand, was humming a tune that only he could understand. He had a contented look on his face. At this time, he could not help but fantasize about his bright future after this meritorious deed. He thought about how Yes Hen had said more than once that the 5-star army was not to be trifled with. However, this time he had used his actions to give the other party a slap in the face. He wanted to see what else this person had to say this time. Kun Sa, who was overjoyed, said something that made people smile. "If you don't fight, you won't know that our Ili army's cavalrymen are so powerful." Kun Sa's beautiful dream did not last long. After a quarter of an hour, Wu Liji suddenly returned from the tent. "What's wrong? You haven't set off yet?" Kun Sa was somewhat displeased that he had taken a quarter of an hour to prepare. With this kind of speed, he still wants to take the credit? "General, something bad has happened. Something bad has happened. As soon as I led the army out, we ran into the main force of the 5-star army. Each of them was armed with a 3-meter-long saber, and was covered in heavy armor. We were no match for them and lost." Wu Liji's face was filled with anxiety and guilt. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.